Chapter 47. It was the first time for Li Yunxin to enter the magistrate's office. Fortunately, this magistrate's office did look like a magistrate's office, and there were no accidents that surprised him. Stepping into the high threshold, he saw the front yard. The terrazzo tiles covered the ground, without a trace of dust. When he looked up, he could see the main hall with the open door. With his good eyesight, he had already seen the magistrate sitting behind the platform. In the main hall, 2 rows of bailiffs were holding water and fire rods, squinting at the door. Lu Laodao had arrived. Perhaps it was because he felt guilty when he sent someone to invite him. He panicked and wanted to run away, so his outer robe was torn. Right now, he was covering the tear with one hand, looking like Shizi holding the heart. But his face was sad and distressed. He lowered his head and secretly glanced at the 2 people next to the magistrate. There were 2 Taoists next to the magistrate. One looked like he was in his 40s, which meant he might be in his 60s. Because cultivators were supposed to look younger than ordinary people. This person was wearing a Taoist robe, which was made of white satin, and he held a horsetail whisk in his hand. The other person seemed to be in his early 20s, wearing a coarse Taoist robe, and his hand was empty. This Taoist robe, Li Yunxin found it familiar. It was the kind of Taoist robe worn by Qi Songzi, Kong Kanzi, and Huainanzi. This person was a swordsman of the Ling Su sword sect. Then the one holding the horsetail whisk was the Taoist of the Shangqing Danding sect. Magistrate Liu was scared out of his wits. Li Yunxin had heard about these 2 people from Aze. The Taoist of the Shangqing Danding sect was called Song Yunzi. The Taoist of the Ling Su sword sect was called Pun Enzi. The 2 people guarded Li Yaoxi for 4 hours a day, and the fee was 100 taels. That was a net profit of 100,000 yuan per hour. After glancing at these important people, he looked at the plaintiff opposite Lu Laodao. Oh, the victim here. The Qiao stood by the door, and so did Qiao Jiaming. The 3 people whispered to each other, and no one knew what they were talking about. Seeing Li Yunxin come in, Qiao Jiaming gave him a vicious look, pointed at him, and then wiped his neck with his index finger. Crazy. Once he was done, Yin Pingji took a step forward and said in a low voice, "Once you enter the yamen, it will be hard to get out. Think carefully about what you're going to say after seeing this. Don't be stupid." Then he strode through the crowd and walked to the door of the hall. He bowed to Governor Li and said loudly, "Sir, the suspect is here." Li Yaoxi frowned slightly and carefully looked at the people at the door. He sighed imperceptibly and said, "Bring them in." The lecture hall opened. Those outside guard the door well. You are allowed to listen, watch, and not make any noise. Otherwise, you will be fined 1 silver tael per person. Li Yunxin was slightly stunned. He turned his head and looked outside the gate. It was just like what was shown in the TV series. A group of people had gathered outside and were looking around. His sharp eyes saw that Miss Yin was also among them, but he couldn't see her expression clearly. The governor gave the order, and everyone quieted down. He didn't know the rules, but he knew to follow. The 3 people of the Qiao family crossed the threshold and entered the door with a relaxed look. He also walked to Lu Laodao, pulled his sleeve, and motioned him to follow in. Laodao just realized that Li Yunxin had come. He hurriedly lowered his voice and said with a crying tone, "Brother Xian, what should we do? Look at that." He glanced at the 2 cultivators beside Governor Li. Li Yunxin knew what he wanted to say. 2 cultivators of the Xianmen sect were present, who dared to kill people. The old Taoist only knew that he had been preparing for the past few days, but he really did not know how the unfathomable master, in his heart, was preparing. As far as he was concerned, all the bizarre possibilities he could think of, Brother Xian probably couldn't do anything this time. If he had known, he would have escaped. Li Yunxin just smiled at him. Governor Li saw them whispering to each other, but he didn't care. In fact, when he saw this situation, even if it was just a questioning, he would hit the gavel and ask them to be quiet. But today it was really boring. Yes, it was boring. But this kind of boring was not the kind of boring that he didn't care about everything. But it was boring to be annoyed. Everything he looked at was annoying, and everything he looked at made him shudder. He felt dazzled when he looked at the sunlight on the terrazzo floor outside the hall. The ground was so bright that it made him dizzy. He quickly turned his gaze. When he turned his gaze, it was dark in front of him. The hall was shady. But when he saw the dark corner in the hall, he suddenly felt a palpitation and inexplicably scared. He really didn't know what he was afraid of. Seeing the silk padded under the official seal, he was also annoyed. He still didn't know what he was annoyed about. He always felt that something was wrong. Always felt that there was something wrong. He was eager to find out what was wrong and solve it. But he couldn't catch it. He couldn't catch a certain point or a certain line. He thought it was the recent case that made him annoyed. But now that all the people were here, he became even more annoyed. The old and the young were whispering to each other. They should scold him. But looking at the young man, he didn't know why he felt annoyed. The way he walked was annoying. The way he opened and closed his mouth was annoying. And the way he moved was like, what the hell? Why was he like Aze? He was annoyed by Aze these few days. But when he thought of Aze, he felt that he seemed to have forgotten something. In the past few days, he had forgotten something very important. Hey, so annoying. Li Yaoxi grabbed the gavel and smashed it on the table. The strength was so strong that it even made his fingers hurt. Silence. Silence. He didn't even notice that his butt had left the chair. He stood up. Song Yunzi and Pun Enzi frowned slightly and exchanged glances. Li Yaoxi was not right today. What was going on? Lao Dao Song Yunzi flicked his horsetail whisk, made a sign, closed his eyes for a while, and opened them again. There was nothing unusual. The Yin spirit formation set up by the two of them might not be able to trap a powerful cultivator, but it should be able to sense it. In this government office, except for the two of them, no one else used spiritual power. Then they didn't need to worry about it. If Li Yaoxi had other troubles, it was not within the scope of the two of them. Thus, the two of them lightly glanced at the people in the hall. Their eyes paused on Lu Laodao for a while, and then they closed their eyes again. When the magistrate shouted, almost everyone trembled in fear. After shouting, Li Yaoxi felt his heart was beating fast, and the depression in his heart seemed to have been vented a little. He continued, the two in the hall, what are their names? Then this little one, you go first. He stretched out his hand like a drunk person and pointed at Li Yunxin. It's you. What are you called? Seeing the governor's imposing manner, Qiao Jiming viciously laughed. The governor was furious. It was no wonder that Meng Ao, that old man, refused to give in these days, and insisted on making Li Yunxin anxious. Now he vented all his anger on this kid. He was close to Li Yunxin, and he sneered and whispered, in a while you will suffer. Li Yunxin didn't look at him, and cupped his hands. Go back to the hall. This commoner Li Yunxin. His voice was pleasant and clear, but his tone was a little strange, and the word yun was a little long, as if he was acting with a little more laziness. When the governor heard his name, his face twitched, as if he had swallowed a fly. Then the three people of the Qiao family felt even more delighted. They hated him to the extreme. What happened next confirmed their conjecture. Li Yaoxi frowned again, grabbed the pot full of sticks on the table, and threw it at Li Yunxin's head. I'll call you Li Yunxin. Unfortunately, his aim was not good, and it was smashed askew. The sticks scattered on the ground, and the pot smashed on the door frame of the main hall, rolled over, and stopped at Qiao Jiming's feet. It was the first time that they saw the governor so angry, which was shameful. Even Yin Pingji felt something was wrong, and hurriedly said, calm down, calm down. But he didn't know how to comfort him. At this time, Lu Laodao had been trembling with fear, and his knees were weak. He knew that he couldn't get through this hurdle today. Those onlookers outside the door also exclaimed in a low voice. They had seen the governor solve cases. But such a stout person, when had he ever been so angry? At most he would slap the table. 20 canes, 30 slaps. He had always shed other people's blood, but he never hurt himself. But now something was wrong. Only Qiao Jiming was the happiest. He squinted at Li Yunxin and teased him with a voice that could only be heard by the two of them. Hey, hey, boy. Li Yunxin turned his face and looked at him. Idiot, you are so annoying. Qiao Jiming was stunned. Ah. Then he sneered. Oh, you still have a temper? Don't you see His Excellency Li? What's wrong with His Excellency Li? Li Yunxin looked at him and his expression, and suddenly a smile appeared on his face. "Do you think that His Excellency is the support of you bastards? How annoying are you? Do you have to keep buzzing in my ear?" Qiao Jiaming realized that he never seemed to have an advantage when it came to sharp-tongued. But he knew that there would come a time when he could vent his anger completely. When Lord Li was so angry that he threw the two of them into prison, he could do whatever he wanted to them. So he sneered, "Just wait, His Excellency Li." But he was interrupted again. "Do you believe that I will kill him now?" Li Yunqin stared at his eyes, seeming to be very impatient and disgusted. "It was a rare opportunity, and I wanted to observe more. Why did you stand by my side? I don't have any interest in it now." Qiao Jiaming felt that he had heard it wrong. He was stunned for a while, thinking about what Li Yunqin had said before, and laughed angrily. "Are you freaking scared? Kill." He lowered his voice fiercely. "You want to kill him in front of me? Huh, little bastard." He said this a little loudly. The two women behind him also heard it. Both Mrs. Qiao and Mrs. Qiao were women. It was the first time for them to go to this kind of court, so they were so scared that they didn't dare to make a sound. Then they saw that Governor Li was furious. Even as the victim, she also felt nervous and didn't dare to speak. But at this moment, they knew that the two of them were quarreling, which didn't stop them from casting a mocking and pitiful look at Li Yunqin. So Li Yunqin sighed. It was like being pestered by a child who asked for candy. While the two of them were whispering, Prefectural Magistrate Li angrily and violently asked about old Taoist Lu's name and past. He closed his eyes for a moment, opened them again, grinned, and said in a soft, almost whispering voice, "Very well. I will kill him in front of you." Without waiting for Qiao Jiaming to speak again, Li Yunqin had already lifted his hem. Inside, a greenish-gray, slightly shiny undershirt with fish scales was revealed. When he lifted his hem, he had already said loudly, "His Excellency, this commoner is wronged." Then he stepped forward, cupped his fists, and half knelt on the ground. Li Yaoxi's violent interrogation was interrupted by his voice, and he frowned and looked at him. But when he saw Li Yunqin half kneeling, he seemed to be stunned. His expression was frozen on his face, his mouth was slightly open, and his eyelids were blinking quickly, but he couldn't speak. The two cultivators closest to him once again noticed his abnormality. This time, it was Pan Nanzi who frowned and formed a seal, but he still did not find anything. Then it was still this person's own problem. Pan Nanzi shook his head. This idiot. As a dignified fifth-rank official, he ended up like this because of a case. However, it was fine as long as it wasn't a problem of evil magic. With the two of them keeping watch, how could a healthy man in his prime be in danger? It seemed like he was overthinking things. Thus he closed his eyes again. She heard Li Yunqin say, "That night, this commoner and my master spent the night with the people from the escort agency. We got along very well. This commoner still remembers that escort Qiao had baked a cake by the fire, and asked Miss Qiao, 'Are you satisfied with the taste?' Then Pan Nanzi heard a suppressed and painful moan. It was Li Yaoxi's moaning. He suddenly opened his eyes, and found that Li Yaoxi had sat back down on the official chair. Then, he widened his eyes and stared at the sky, as if he had seen something incomparably terrifying and terrifying. His throat was gurgling, his face suddenly turned red, and his hands were waving wildly in front of him, as if he was trying to dispel something. The two cultivators' eyes lit up at the same time. "The demon is here!" With a low grunt, they formed a hand sign together. However, there was nothing. There was still nothing. When the two of them looked at Li Yaoxi in surprise and confusion, the latter's eyes were wide open, and he was dead on the chair. There was a deathly silence that lasted for a breath of time. Panicked shouts suddenly broke out in the court. Yin Pingji pulled out the knife from his waist and stood in front of Li Yaoxi's body. He stared at the sky in horror. The bailiffs on both sides were quick to react. They had already yelled and rushed to move Lord Li to check his breathing. The slower ones held the water and fire sticks in their hands and looked around, but they didn't know what had happened. What happened? Li Yaoxi, a dignified fifth-rank official, died in this bright, well-surrounded room with two cultivators. He died suddenly. The three people of the Qiao family were also stunned, but their next reaction, they went to see Li Yunqin. They looked at Li Yunqin, as if they had seen a ghost. Then, They saw the young man calmly stand up from the ground, turn his head and smile at them, revealing his white and neat teeth. "I kill in front of you." Then he stretched out his hand, pointed at the three people in turn, and said happily, "You three, none of you can escape." Against such a horrified atmosphere, and seeing the smile on his face, they didn't know why the three people felt that this smile was so cruel and evil. Mrs. Chiao finally couldn't help but let out a shrill scream, flew back a few steps, and pointed at Li Yunxin. "Ah! It's him! He's using magic! He killed the prefectural magistrate!" The shrill female voice made people's ears hurt, and it didn't seem like it was going to stop. The Kinzo cultivator Pun Nzi was annoyed. He looked at the young man she was pointing at, and suddenly waved his hand. Mrs. Chiao's body was like a doll as she slammed into the wall, leaving a bloody mark, and no longer moving. How could he not be annoyed? How could he not be annoyed? The dignified cultivators of Daotong and Kinzo, two people, guarding the prefectural magistrate, setting up the great evil spirit formation. But now that monster killed someone in front of their eyes. They didn't know anything, and they didn't know what to do. And they had to listen to that stupid woman point at a mortal and say that he killed someone. That was a great humiliation. In that stupid woman's mind, cultivators like her, cultivators who trained hard, couldn't even see through a child's magic? What? The cultivators knew that it was impossible for someone to cast a spell in this formation without being noticed. Just like how mortals knew that it was impossible for the sky to become the earth, and the earth to become the sky. But Yin Pingji also heard Mrs. Chiao's words. These words were like a clap of thunder that struck his heart. He looked at Li Yunxin in disbelief, and remembered the words that the young man said to him under the willow tree an hour ago. Maybe it can be solved. He sucked in a breath of cold air, and looked straight at Li Yunxin's face. And the young man had already supported Lu Laodao, and was leaning against the wall like many people in the hall who were panicking. The young man was also looking at him. There was a malicious and mocking smile on his face. He looked at him, and then slightly spread out his hands. It seemed like he was saying, "What can you do?" Yin Jiping moved his eyes away with difficulty, and looked at Xiao Jiaming, Madame Xiao, who were too scared to make a sound and curled up on the ground, and Madame Xiao's corpse, which was oozing more and more blood. He seemed to get an electric shock, and forced himself to look away. He didn't dare to look at Li Yunxin anymore. He couldn't say, if he wanted to live he couldn't say it. Even the two so-called masters didn't notice it. Look at what happened to Mrs. Chiao. It was not until this time that Lu Laodao held Li Yunxin's arm tightly, and asked him with trembling lips, "Brother Xan, what on earth is going on?" Chapter 48. Li Yunxin only faintly smiled and said, "We'll talk about it later. We'll leave in a bit." In reality, after a while they left. Their employer was killed in front of their eyes. And even when they spent a lot of money to set up the Yin spirit formation, a formation that even a transcendent realm cultivator like Li Yunxin felt was troublesome, was not something that these two emptiness realm cultivators could set up on their own. They had indeed asked their sect and friends for help. However, this did not mean that the two of them cared about Li Yaoxi. Instead, as a cultivator, taking on such a job was actually fighting against a great demon or enemy that might exist. It was fine if they didn't care, or they could fool around. Most cultivators wouldn't take the death of a mortal to heart. However, their reputation would be ruined. Just like today, from now on, the impression these two would leave in the hearts of the cultivators of the world would be people who set up the Yin spirit formation, but didn't even notice who did it. Their reputation was terrible, not because they were cruel, sinister, or malicious, but because they were useless. Thus, when Song Yunzi looked at Xiao Liushir's corpse on the ground, he frowned. "You were a bit heavy-handed." Pun Nzi of the Spirit Void Sword sect had completely lost his patience. He could only use his spirit sense to search for traces of the enemy, as he said, "I don't have the benevolence of your Shangqing sect. I already passed the killing tribulation." When his gaze swept past Yin Pingji, he scolded him. "Tell these people to scram. Don't hinder this grandpa's business. If anyone else howls, I'll kill them again." The people in the hall were all ordinary people, this was certain. Even if there was a powerful demon like Bai Yunshin that Huai Nanzi couldn't see through, in this kind of Yin spirit formation, there was no way they wouldn't be noticed. If they stayed here, there would be too many people talking. No matter what methods the two of them used, they would be seen by these ignorant commoners. It wasn't that they were afraid of them secretly learning. It was good to occasionally show off and let the ignorant people worship them. But they weren't in the mood right now. In reality, after the two of them slowly calmed down, what they suspected was it the demon who did it, or was it the enemy who did it? Why was that? Yin Pingji shuddered slightly after being scolded by the immortal master. Gritting his teeth, he glanced at Li Yunshin out of the corner of his eye and said in a low voice, "Immortal masters, please make a decision. This case is still *T case. You think I don't know what's going on?" Pan Nanzi lost his last bit of patience. His eyes narrowed dangerously. "You want to stay here with them and let me go through another calamity? The case was caused by this case. Killing talent. If I hear about this case again, all of you vermin will die." Yin Pingji didn't know what the killing tribulation was, but he knew that someone would probably die. They also knew that this immortal master didn't care whether they were vermin or not, or whether the people in the hall were innocent. He was just angry. But this anger came at the right time. He hurriedly glared and waved his hand. "Didn't you hear what the immortal master said? Disperse everyone for me. Disperse. Hurry up and carry them away. Don't delay Master Immortal's work." The Yamen runners were confused from beginning to end. Whether in the eyes of the arrestor or the immortal master, they were all insignificant people, so they just obeyed orders. Even if they didn't know what had happened, they still had to obey. At this moment, some people ran outside the Yamen to disperse the onlookers. Some went to carry Madame Qiao's body, and some went to take people away. But Yin Pingji personally went to take Li Yunshin away. When the arrestor walked to Li Yunshin in a panic, Xiao Jiaming and Madame Qiao had been pushed away by the Yamen runners, because they didn't dare to shout anymore, and were scared out of their wits. Li Yunshin's expression and words were still vivid in his mind. "None of you can escape." He wanted to beg for mercy, but he was driven out by the Yamen runners. He staggered away and looked back at Li Yunshin, almost crying. Yin Pingji pursed his lips tightly and walked to Li Yunshin and Lu Laodao. His back was not as straight as before, but his shoulders were slightly slumped and his neck was slightly leaning forward. Probably even he didn't realize that this was the state he had always been in when he met a superior. He thought for a while and didn't know how to address Li Yunshin at this time. Seeing the faint smile on Li Yunshin's face, he could only say in a hoarse voice, "You too, please, follow me out of the Yamen." A Yamen runner heard his words and looked at him in surprise. But at this time, Yin Pingji was not in the mood to care about what others thought of him. Li Yunshin looked at him with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He pulled Lu Laodao and said, "Inspector Yin has spoken. Master, let's go." Laodao knew how to read the situation. He knew that at this time, in front of these two people, he had to be obedient. So without saying a word, he followed beside Li Yunshin, full of the great fortune and gratitude of the Daqing state after surviving a disaster. After leaving the main hall, Li Yunshin glanced at Yin Pingji, who was carefully observing his expression. He smiled and said, "Well, don't guess. I killed them. But even if you tell them calmly later, they won't believe you. Instead, you'll be out of luck. They'll think that you're laughing at them. Just like Madame Qiao. You know, that kind of person is always very confident in himself. It's very difficult for him to accept things that are beyond his knowledge." Li Yunshin shrugged. "He's stubborn. In fact, it's similar to your previous state. I said that there might be a way, but you didn't believe me." Yin Pingji's heart jumped with his words, and he hurriedly said, It's me. You want to admit your mistake and apologize to me, but you don't know whether I really did it, or I'm just pretending." The three people had walked to the outside of the Yamen and left the sight of the two practitioners in the hall. Li Yunshin stopped and turned to look at Yin Pingji. "I understand. After all, you've been a constable for so many years. No matter at home or in the workplace, you've been flattered. It's also difficult for you to accept things that are beyond your knowledge. If you can't make up your mind, I can open your eyes again." Li Yunxin tilted his head and looked at Qiao Jiaming and Madame Qiao, who were guarding a weeping willow not far away. He pointed to them and said, "Those two people were frightened by what happened just now. I also told them that they would die too. Now I'm telling you. In a while, you help me stop those two people. Don't let them come over to bother me. And don't let them plead with me. Tell both of them they're dead. You see, this is a chance for you to confirm your guess. You can observe and see if you can find some evidence to say that I did it." Chapter 49. Of course, you can also risk your life to talk to the two Taoist priests and observe with them, but only if you're not afraid of death. It's easy for me to kill someone. You're the same. By the way, my master has a friend called Meng Ao. He's in jail. Whatever you do, this man must be set free without a scratch. You can hesitate and be unsure if you want to release him or not. That's okay, at least the guarantor is still alive. You can release him after the two Taoist priests die. But for your own sake, you better pray that he doesn't die in jail. Otherwise you'll be done for. After Li Yunxin said this, Yin Pingji was stunned. Then he shouted to a runner not far away, "Bring the two Qiaos to the back. I'll interrogate them later." Then without another word, he turned around and ran towards the direction of the prison. Li Yunxin turned to Lu Laodao and said, "Let's go. I'm hungry. I heard that the main branch of Munanju is over there. Let's go have a look. Then I'll tell you about it." Looks like I'm not used to acting cool. If I don't tell someone, I won't know. Haha. An hour later, the two were sitting in Munanju on Willow Street. It was a private room on the second floor, facing the street. The window was open, and they could see the bright sunshine, but they didn't feel too hot. There was an old willow tree next to the window, and the green silk strands blocked the direct sunlight. They could see people on the street from the window. This was probably one of the busiest streets in Weicheng, with people coming and going. It couldn't be compared to the pedestrian streets of the future, but it was not much worse. Li Yunxin poured a glass of wine for Lao Dao. "Drink it. Calm down. When we get home, I'll buy a whip and let people know that I'm innocent." Lao Dao took the cup with trembling hands and drank it all in one breath. He took a deep breath and shook his head. "Brother Xian, did you really kill the prefectural magistrate?" Lao Dao loved to drink, but he couldn't hold his liquor well, so he still used a medium cup. After drinking this cup of Munan Chun, he felt much more relaxed and was not as scared as before. Carefully he asked another question. "But how did you kill him?" Li Yunxin twirled the wine cup in his hand. He stared blankly for a while before a smile appeared on his lips. "This is actually also an experiment." "Experiment?" "Yeah, it's a test." Li Yunxin took a sip of wine. "There's no need to make things so big. There are many ways to settle this. For example, it's not like I can't get money. If they want money, I can spend some effort to get it and give it to them. Then we can negotiate. Or I can do something to the Joneses to make them stop. But first, I'm not happy. You have to know that it's not easy to live. Being happy is the most important thing. My biggest taboo is to make myself suffer when there is a way to solve the problem. Second, it's for this experiment. I've never tried to kill people like this before. After the experiment is done, I have other things to solve." As he spoke, his voice gradually became lower. It was hard for Lu Laodao to listen attentively. Li Yunxin suddenly raised his head and drank all the wine. He slammed the table and said, "All right. I'll tell you. You have to know a concept first. I say, old Lu, do you know what consciousness is?" Lu Laodao immediately sat up straight and shook his head solemnly. His face became slightly excited. Li Yunxin knew that he thought that she was going to give him a lecture, but he only smiled and continued. "Consciousness is a person's thoughts. This is easy to understand. People like you probably don't know about consciousness or subconsciousness. Then listen to me slowly. Consciousness, you are thinking about what I said. You hear footsteps outside, and you know that it might be the waiter coming to serve the dishes. These thoughts, the thoughts that you can perceive yourself, are all consciousness. But old Lu, why do you think that the waiter is coming to serve the dishes when you hear the footsteps? If you think about it carefully, it's because you know that this is Southernwood Jew. You know that we ordered the dishes. After ordering the dishes, after a long time, Someone came and the dishes should be served. But the process from hearing the footsteps to the waiter is coming to serve the dishes was omitted by your consciousness. These omitted thoughts, you may think of them as your subconscious, your hidden consciousness. Another example is when you practice calligraphy and swordsmanship. When you first learn a word, you need to think about the next stroke and where to write it. When you first practice swordsmanship, you need to think about the next move. But as time passes and you become proficient, you won't think about how to write, and you won't think about how to move. The subconsciousness completes the process for you. They exist, but you can't perceive them. Of course, what I said is the most direct and simplest example. It might not be that accurate, but you need to understand. Do you understand? Oh, put the dishes here. And a pot of wine. Hurry and order the other dishes. It was Lao Dao's first time coming into contact with these concepts. He was a little surprised. Very surprised that Brother Xian was talking about these, and not the Tao of Immortals. But it was also the first time he thought about these issues. He was also surprised that Brother Xian had studied so thoroughly. He didn't know what Li Yunqin's intention was, but he still listened carefully. After pondering for a while, Li Yunqin drank another cup of wine, and ate a few mouthfuls of food. He nodded. Brother Xian, I think I understand. Then I'll continue. You must have never seen an iceberg. Not many people in the Daqing state have seen one. An iceberg is a huge piece of ice as big as a mountain, floating in the sea. But in fact, what's above the water surface is only about 1/10 of the whole piece of ice. The rest, more hidden under the water surface, you can't see it. A person's consciousness and subconsciousness are almost like this. What you can perceive is only a very small part. Most of the things you hear and see every day, the things you think about, the things you think you don't care about, are still in your subconsciousness. For example, one day before, if you saw the waiter who just came in to serve the dishes, but later forgot about him. Later, when you see him again, you think, oh, this person looks a little familiar. You think and think, but you can't remember. At this time, I tell you, hey, this waiter, isn't he the one who often wandered around our house and stalked us? And when I reminded you, you said, oh yes. You remember. The part of your consciousness that floated out from under the water surface was accepted by you. Then that sentence I said was a hint to you. Not only can a sentence become a hint, but also a kind of light, an object, or even the movement of the curtain in our private room when the wind blows, can become a hint. Chapter 50. Another example is when you write a word, or recite a paragraph from a book. You pick up the pen, and forget how to recite the word. This is because the memory has been hidden. At this time, I write a stroke for you to see, and mention the first sentence to you. You immediately say, oh, I know. This is me guiding out the consciousness that you have hidden. Another example is that there is a sad thing in the past. You slowly forget it, don't think about it, and hide it in your heart. One day, when you are in high spirits, I suddenly mention that thing to you. You remember it, and your mood instantly changes from joy to sadness. This is what I meant. With one sentence, I've guided out the things hidden in your heart. With just one sentence, I've changed your emotions. Do you understand the relationship between consciousness and subconsciousness? Lu Laodao had gradually become interested. Every word of Li Yunqin was a door to a new world for him. At this time, he didn't think about why Li Yunqin said these, and how he killed prefectural magistrate Li. He only focused on understanding his words. He nodded. I understand a little. Then let's talk about Li Yaoxi. Li Yunqin suddenly changed the topic. He looked at the table, put down the chopsticks, and reached out to tear a drumstick from the whole roasted chicken that emitted a charming fragrance. That night, a big demon came to his house. It was the thunderstorm 10 days ago, and the main hall was destroyed. Lao Dao was lost in thought. At this time, he was surprised when he heard big demon. I don't think you have seen a big demon before. You may not even have seen a demon, but I am familiar with it. Li Yunqin looked at the drumstick and bit it hard. He also watched the golden chicken skin being pulled and torn by his teeth. I have seen that demon. Why do I know this matter? In fact, I can infer from many details. He met Aze. He was a master of playing with people's hearts. so he easily gained the trust of the other party. With a little hint and guidance, he knew a lot of details of that night. The thunderstorm, the young man's laughter. There were young men in the Li mansion, but it was not anyone in the mansion who laughed unbridledly at night. It was an outsider. When Li Yunxin was being hunted in the ruined temple, it was also a stormy day. She had also heard a man laugh. The sound was very pleasant. Aze said that the next day he saw the embers of a bonfire in the other half of the house that hadn't collapsed. On the night Li Yunxin was in the rundown temple, the great fiendish demon, the ninth young master, had lit a bonfire and roasted a human. Constable Xing's wife and son were eaten during a thunderstorm as well. Because of these clues, he suspected that it was the ninth young master. Then he used a lot of effort to hypnotize Aze. It gave him a lot of abilities and instincts that he didn't know about before. He got more information from Li Yaoxi. Actually, this wasn't a difficult task. A hypnotized Aze wouldn't be able to break through a metal plate with his bare hands. He was still himself, but he would pay attention to more things. For example, every smile of Li Yunxin's, every wrinkle on his face, every rise and fall of his tone, would be faithfully recorded by him, and then passed on to Li Yunxin. He felt that every time he chatted with young Master Li, but in fact, every time he chatted, he brought back a lot of information. Finally, Li Yunxin figured out the ins and outs of the matter. That night, it was indeed the ninth young master. That night, the ninth young master passed through the city of Wei. He fell from the sky along with the thunderstorm. He was hungry and wanted to eat supper. Li Yaoxi was in the main hall that night. He didn't want to die. Coincidentally, the ninth young master hated him, so he called his two beautiful concubines to come. They were sent to the ninth young master to be killed and roasted over a bonfire. After the ninth young master left, the fear in the governor's heart, as it was the first time he encountered a man-eating demon. Thus, he spent all his wealth to hire 2 cultivators to protect him. I borrowed Zay's mouth to let him temporarily forget about meeting the ninth young master. Li Yunxin threw the chicken thigh bone on the table, picked up a handkerchief from the copper basin, filled with warm water, and wiped his hands. Such a big thing. How could he forget? Lu Laodao couldn't help shouting. Why not? Li Yunxin looked at him with a smile. Some people can even forget to eat when they are busy. They can even burn their hands with cigarettes. Why can't they forget other things? Or when they are guided or hinted at? For example, the waiter who delivered the food to us was indeed the one who had been monitoring our house for the past few days. He was Yin Pingji's underling. He came in a few times just now, and you already felt that he looked familiar. Now, he is aiming at you with a crossbow outside the door curtain. Speaking of this, a breeze blew, and the door curtain moved. Li Yunxin used his finger to knock on the table. There was a loud thud. Lu Laodao's eyes instantly widened. He jumped up from the stool and stared at the wall by the window. But after 2 or 3 seconds he came back to his senses, looked at the door curtain in disbelief, and then looked at Li Yunxin. Sit down. It's okay. Li Yunxin smiled and waved his hand. What did you see just now? But Lu Laodao still walked 2 steps quickly, carefully lifted the door curtain, and then sat back at the table. His face was full of disbelief and great admiration. Brother Xing Yu? Just now. I saw the waiter rush in from behind the curtain and shot an arrow at me. It was over there. It missed, and it nailed the side of the window. Yes. Li Yunxin looked at him. Previously, you were wondering how I killed Li Yaoxi, and your heart was filled with great curiosity. What I said was new to you, and you trusted me. So you listened attentively and completely followed my thoughts. And when I was telling you, I used familiar people seen before, and the waiter as examples. Old Lu, this was the process of me guiding and hinting at you. Through my tone and posture, I repeatedly deepened the impression of these things in your mind. When I had deepened it enough, you drank some wine. So when your mind was at its most scattered, I told you what I said just now. At this time, the boundary between your conscious and subconscious was already very blurry. So for the last time I knocked on the table. This knock was the last straw, because it was very much like the sound of an arrow nailing on wood. Your mind quickly connected the surging subconscious together, and restored the non-existent reality. You had an illusion. You saw what you saw just now. But you are in good health, so it doesn't matter. You see, this is how it came about. As for that Li Yaoxi, Li Yunxin did not give Lu Laodao a chance to exclaim, and continued. I made him temporarily forget what happened that night. So when the main hall was repaired, he would still interrogate us in the main hall. But although he forgot, I still spent a few days through Aze, constantly hinting and guiding him. I asked Aze to give him thunderbolt wood, saying that it could ward off evil. In fact, I was hinting at the thunderstorm that night, deepening the fear in his subconscious. I gave him fish, reminding him of the demon ninth young master, and also deepening the fear in his subconscious. I also said that the Dragon King Temple, the river, and the rain deepened his fear. I made him be constantly guided and hinted at by me, just for the day when I went to court. These days, he was already very irritated. When he went to court and saw me, I used my tone and movements to match Aze's behavior a few days ago, to complete the final guidance. At that time, because of anxiety and pressure, he was like you before, at the critical point where his consciousness and subconscious were mixed up. So I said that sentence, I asked Aze to ask him when he was eating, is the taste satisfactory? Then I told him in court. Lu Laodao could not help but continue. You said, you heard that escort Xiao, at the bonfire. Yes, the bonfire. He asked Miss Qiao if the taste was satisfactory. Yes. Li Yunxin smiled, the bonfire, and the taste. When that demon ate people, it was very likely that he mentioned how it tasted. This was the sentence I used to detonate him. At the same time, to be safe, I also wore this inner shirt. Green-gray fish scale pattern. The outer shirt was a white robe, to ensure that he remembered what happened that night again. Then, as expected, he remembered. The fear that had been suppressed for so many days, and the fear that was constantly strengthened by me, suddenly rushed into his consciousness. Everything rushed into his mind. Just like you just now, he saw the truth created by his subconscious. He probably saw that there was another cloud in the sky, lightning and thunder. That great demon rushed down towards him. It was a fear of life and death. But it was not the last time. This time, the fear was 10 times stronger, 100 times stronger. So, his mentality exploded. This guy, he had high blood pressure, fatty liver. His ancestors all died of palpitations. There was also a family hereditary heart disease. Aze had long told me that Li Yaoxi's heart would occasionally hurt. So old Lu, you were not afraid just now. You were healthy, so you ignored it. This Li Yaoxi had to die. Even in a mini era, if an autopsy was done, it would still be a sudden heart attack. It has nothing to do with me. You asked me how I did it. That's how I did it. Li Yunxin smiled warmly. Enough to understand a person. Then his life and death were in my hands. Chapter 51. After saying that, Li Yunxin poured himself another glass of wine, and took a sip. The wine was the Mu Nanchun that Lao Dao usually couldn't bear to drink. Even someone like Li Yunxin, who wasn't good at wine, could taste the aroma of fresh grass and fruits. The dishes were almost cold, but fortunately, the two of them ordered mostly cold dishes. They couldn't miss the crispy peanuts, beef with soy sauce, and stir-fried pork hibiscus. He picked up the chopsticks and ate slowly, leaving Lao Dao in a daze. Li Yunxin opened the door to a new world for him. Lao Dao wasn't a cultivator with profound cultivation. Even before he met Li Yunxin, he wasn't a real cultivator. He would be classified as a secular person by Taoist priests and swordsmen. But he still knew some things, so he could see the big picture. So he could understand why the two cultivators in the hall didn't suspect them at all. That was because the technique Li Yunxin used was something that no one in this world had ever studied deeply. Just like in Li Yunxin's era, a person suddenly died. At that time, another person ran to the police officers and said it was a monster who did it. No one would pay attention to him. They just frowned and pushed that person aside, continuing to think, what kind of method did the criminal use? And it was precisely because cultivators had practically grasped all of this world's unimaginable methods that they didn't believe that there existed even more mysterious methods beyond their knowledge. It wasn't even arrogant or stubborn. It was just beyond their knowledge. Lao Dao looked straight at Li Yunxin. The young man was very handsome, with red lips and white teeth, sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He was a real handsome man. The warm sunshine of the spring day reflected the layer of fine hair on his face and neck clearly. Because he was young, his skin was tight, not loose and not wrinkled. His expression was always gentle. Even when he was about to kill, he was gentle and smiling. But at this moment, when Lu Laodao looked at such a young man sitting in the sunshine, he only felt a chill on his back. Because she remembered what he said before. There's no need to go through so much trouble. I just want to do an experiment. Brother Xian, he just for an experiment, he killed someone. He had killed a 5th-rank official of the imperial court. And there were 2 cultivators on the side. There was a sentence that Lao Dao only dared to say in his heart. This was a thought that suddenly appeared in his mind, one that even surprised him. He was a demonic human, a human demon who played with people's hearts. As if he knew Lao Dao's thoughts, Li Yunxin met his gaze. Lao Dao turned his face away, as if he had been electrocuted, and stroked his beard. Old Lu, don't be afraid. Li Yunxin looked at him, then looked out the window. I'm actually very easy to talk to. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. And you really are a good person. I quite like nice people. You're a smart person. And I like smart people too. He put down his chopsticks and stood up. He walked over to the window and looked out. But I hate idiots the most, he said to himself. Stupidity is the original sin. They all deserve to die. These 3 sentences were tinged with coldness and hatred. Lu Laodao had never heard such intense hatred in a person's words before. He didn't know where Li Yunxin, who looked to be only 14 or 15 years old, could have such rich emotions, seasoned tactics, and mature wisdom. He couldn't help but think of that phrase again. A demonic human who played with people's hearts. An inner demon. At this time, Li Yunxin turned around and looked at him. Come on. It looks like you're not in the mood to eat either. Tell the waiter to pack it up. Send it to our mansion. Ha ha ha. Don't pay the bill. There's someone waiting downstairs. Let's go buy a hanging whip. I want one with 200 rings. As the 2 went downstairs, Lu Laodao finally knew who Li Yunxin was referring to. Yin Pingji was sitting downstairs, with a cup of tea in front of him. The innkeeper was also sitting next to him, chatting with him. Lu Laodao was a little perturbed. He didn't know why Inspector Yin came. Was it because he felt something was wrong and couldn't believe it? So he came to find them? But his worries disappeared without a trace when he saw the look on Yin Pingji's face. Originally, Constable Yin was trying to remain calm, and was chatting with the innkeeper. But when he saw the 2 coming down from the wooden stairs, he stood up immediately. It looked like a superior who had been waiting for a long time finally came. Seeing him like this, the innkeeper thought there was a big shot in disguise upstairs. So he also stood up in surprise and turned around. But he only saw a young man in Lao Dao. So he was even more surprised. He knew what kind of person Yin Pingji was. The big shots in the city of Wei could be counted. The 4 magistrates of the prefecture. The magistrate in charge of the city of Wei level 4. Under the magistrate were the 4 prefectural magistrates of the 4 prefectures, level 5. But now there was no magistrate in the city of Wei. The previous magistrate went back to his hometown to mourn, and it usually took a year. So in the city of Wei, there were only 4 prefectural magistrates with official titles. Now there were 3. As for the rest of the officials without official titles, the ones with the most authority and prestige, other than the 4 chief arresters of the prefectures, were the arresters of the prefectures. In the Liuhe prefecture under the jurisdiction of Li Yaoxi, Yin Pingji's words carried the most weight. There were more than 100,000 people in the prefecture, and everyone with a reputation knew that Inspector Yin was popular in both the legal and illegal circles. Even Magistrate Li had to be polite to Inspector Yin on some matters. When a new store opened, or a shop opened, anyone who didn't show respect to Inspector Yin would never be able to continue doing business. So the innkeeper was very surprised to see such a figure standing up to welcome the young and old. Then he looked at Li Yunxin, who was looking at Inspector Yin with a smile, casually cupping his hands. Oh, so fast. What happened? Yin Pingji took a deep breath and reluctantly gave a smile to the innkeeper. Old Wang, go ahead with your business. I have something to discuss with you. The innkeeper was full of surprise. Go ahead, go ahead. I won't disturb your business. Then he turned and said, I didn't know you two were Inspector Yin's friends. It's not a crime to not know. 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 You two don't have to pay the bill. Li Yunxin smiled. Thank you. Pack up the food upstairs and send it to the Dragon King Temple, the one behind the Hongfu Escort Agency. Ha. Ha, yes, you are a chain company. You don't know that the small escort agency is on Taoshi Road. The innkeeper hurriedly nodded his head and loudly ordered the waiter to prepare a table just as it is. And then he went behind the counter. He sat on his back, but his ears perked up. Unfortunately, he couldn't hear anything and could only see Inspector Yin's face, like a grandson. Hey, Yin Pingji, you also have this day. But who on earth are these two people? After the innkeeper left, Yin Pingji carefully observed Li Yunxin's face and slowly said a few words. Just now, Madame Qiao was killed by the Yamen runner who guarded her in the backyard. Did you also do this? Chapter 52. But Li Yunxin didn't stop. He just walked slowly out of the door. Yin Pingji had to follow him and stared at his face. Li Yunxin didn't stop until he walked into the sunlight outside of Nanmuju. While tidying his clothes and cuffs, he squinted at the people on the street and said, As a civil servant, you need evidence. It was obviously the Yamen runner who killed them. It has nothing to do with me. Seeing his reaction, Yin Pingji really believed him. But for some reason, he felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Instead, he spoke more fluently. Good. I won't talk nonsense. He looked at Lu Laodao and then at Li Yunxin. Yin Pingji, admire those who are capable. What you did today, not only I couldn't see through it, but those two also couldn't see through it. I'm convinced because of this. You are flexible. Mr. Yin is a great man. But I only have one thing to ask of you. Don't kill any more people. Yin Pingji looked at Li Yunxin and said sincerely, 2 people died in one day, and they died in the mansion. If Qiao Jiming dies, this case can't be closed. In the future, as long as I have a say in the city of Wei, you can do whatever you want. Just don't make it difficult for me this time, okay? Lu Laodao looked at Yin Pingji and felt his eyeballs were going to pop out. He was a native of the city of Wei, so he certainly knew this Inspector Yin. When did he talk to anyone like this? All he wanted now was to push Li Yunxin aside and say to Constable Yin with cupped hands, Okay. Let's settle this matter. However, he saw that Li Yunxin had already tidied up her clothes. She turned around and looked at Constable Yin seriously. Mr. Yin, we may have to deal with each other a lot in the future, so it's better to make some things clear first. For example, you should know what kind of person I am first. Then we will get along much better. I don't like to scare people. I don't like to joke. And I don't like idiots. That's why I said that all 3 of them must die. And that's exactly what I meant. He wasn't trying to scare anyone. I'm not joking when I say that it's my fault. As long as I have a way, he will definitely be in trouble. Now that you know these 2 points, Mr. Yin, you don't have to say anything else. Because if you say anything else, it will make me unhappy. I will feel that you are a very, very annoying person, and my thoughts will not be clear. You're not an idiot, you should understand what I'm saying. Even though he knew about Li Yunxin's methods, even though he was shocked and astonished, even though he said those words that sounded like he was begging and admitting defeat, hearing Li Yunxin's words made Yin Pingji feel embarrassed. His face was red for the first time in a long time, after being reprimanded so harshly by a youth. He took a deep breath and squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. Are you threatening me? Li Yunxin tilted his head slightly and nodded. Yes, I am threatening you, intimidating you. If you continue to annoy me, I will kill you. After saying this, he smiled and turned around to leave. Lu Laodao kept saying hey. He looked at Yin Pingji, and then at Li Yunxin, and finally chased after him. Brother Xian, I know you're very capable. But this, Lu Laodao lowered his voice on the street. This person, Brother Xian, aren't you afraid that he will really come to make trouble? At that time, you will really. He won't. Li Yunxin answered him directly. If he really made up his mind to make trouble for me because of what I said, he wouldn't have lived until now, and wouldn't have been able to get this position. Lu Laodao had to believe his words, but he couldn't help but worry in his heart. He felt that Brother Xian seemed to be too arrogant these days. Didn't he say that he would stay quietly in the city of Wei for a period of time? Of course. Lu Laodao didn't know about Li Yunxin's calculative. This Yin Pingji had investigated him. He didn't know what channels and means he had used to find out his background. After staying in the city of Wei for so many years, he not only found out the truth, but also was very sure about it. It could be seen that he had indeed used some trustworthy channels to investigate him. Li Yunxin had a clear understanding of himself. He knew that at present, he might be able to overwhelm his opponent in Taoism, Kung Fu and techniques. But when it came to human resources in this world, he couldn't compare to 1/10,000th of Yin Pingji. But even such a person firmly believed the fake news. Then the person who deceived him and covered for him. Who was it? He wanted to know this person. He wanted to tame Yin Pingji and make him his loyal dog. Then now, he was taming a dog. He and Lu Laodao strolled on the street for a while and bought a hanging whip. It was not the New Year's Day, so it was not easy to buy it. But in these things, Lu Laodao seemed to be able to do it with ease. After greeting several old fellows and saying, it was a false alarm, he really got it. After the morning, the two of them strolled outside and gradually felt tired. They went home. On the way, Laodao still couldn't help asking Li Yunxin, how did Madame Qiao die? When asking this, Lu Laodao was a little shocked. Look at the state he was in. Under the blazing sun, in the middle of the street, he asked, how did he die? He was eager to know what magical means Brother Xian had used, but he didn't care about the life itself. After asking, he muttered in his heart, I'm going to be possessed by the devil, I'm going to be possessed by the devil. Li Yunxin smiled as usual and said in the usual calm tone, I've told you so much before. This time, I'll give you some advice. You can think about it yourself. I went out a lot in those days. When I was free, I strolled on the street and looked for someone to talk to. At night, I went to the Qiao family and eavesdropped on them. I just listened to these things. Madame Qiao was a little tricky. She was not sick and seldom went out, so she had few enemies. So I planned to let Qiao Jiaming kill her. But later, when I inquired about Qiao Jiaming, I got involved with her. Madame Qiao was in her 30s, and her original name was Wang Xiangxao. She was born in a farmer's family and looked good. She had a childhood sweetheart named Long Taoyi. Later, Wang Xiangxao often went to the city to sell mountain products, and was seen by Qiao Duanhong. Qiao Duanhong liked her, so he sent someone to propose marriage. Although Qiao Duanhong was a little old, he had his own career and company, right? So the Wang family promised Wang Xiangxao to him. Then his childhood sweetheart Long Taoyi was sad. He couldn't forget her, so he worked hard to become a civil servant. It was the Yamen runner. Think about it. The Qiao family had been running the escort agency for several generations. Previously, the whole family had to go to the escort agency. Why were they so miserable? Because Long Taoyi had been making trouble. Chapter 53. The king of hell is easy to provoke, but the little demons are hard to deal with. Long Taoyi was a small Yamen runner, but he was still an authorized official. It was easy for him to cause trouble for a small escort agency. Now that the Qiao family is finished, won't Long Taoyi be happy? This person is also infatuated with love, and has yet to marry. Just for Wang Xiangxao. How do you think Wang Xiangxao reacted? Qiao Duanhong was dead, and the only man in the Qiao family was Qiao Jiaming. However, Qiao Jiaming had an affair with Madame Qiao, so he didn't like her because she was old. Wang Xiangxao is more cunning than Qiao Jiaming and Madame Qiao combined. She wasn't in a hurry, and let Qiao Jiaming torment her like a sinner. I'll follow that Long Taoyi after I'm done with this matter. He has plenty of ways to get the family's wealth from that good-for-nothing Qiao Jiaming. But she's a woman. She knows that she's getting old, and she also knows that distance makes the heart grow fonder. The reason why Long Taoyi loved her was because of the memories from more than 10 years ago, as well as the anger in his chest. If we really let him succeed now, and the two of them have slept together a few times, it's hard to say if Long Taoyi feels that it's not the same feeling as back then and dumps her. It's easy if Wang Xiangxiao thinks this way. She had been going out recently, so she could be considered to be acquainted with Yin Shuerhua. I knew when they were likely to meet, and if they didn't, I could make it so. That's why I chatted with that little girl in the front yard when I had nothing to do. Hee old Lu. Do you really think that I like that little Lolita? I'm trying to put something in her head. Occasionally, she would bump into Wang Xiangxiao and greet her out of courtesy. Then they would start chatting for some reason. Wang Xiangxiao's heart was filled with men, and Yin Shuerhua's heart was filled with me. What were they talking about? Talk about men. He would keep hinting to Wang Xiangxiao that it's best to keep a distance from a man. Let them watch. If they couldn't eat it, they would be dead set on it. Wang Xiangxiao already had this idea in her heart, and now she has made up her mind. This might have worked on other men, but it's different now. But on Long Taoyi tsk. As Li Yunqin said this, the two of them crossed a bridge. Lu Laodao listened attentively. He didn't understand how his brother Xian understood women's thoughts so well. Li Yunqin was a little tired from walking, so he leaned against the stone railing and stopped. He watched as a man in black with a knife led a black horse across the bridge. A man refused to marry a woman he liked in his youth. How big of a deal is this at your time? Isn't it huge? He didn't even have a back. How unfilial. But Long Taoyi still did it. It didn't matter if he did it. Back then, you and Wang Xiangxiao weren't engaged, and Wang Xiangxiao was willing to marry Qiao Duanhong. You've been making things difficult for her all these years because of this. That's not right. This means that Long Taoyi has a very obvious and serious paranoid personality. What was a paranoid personality like? Love jealousy, sensitive, stubborn and inflexible. You like to complain and blame. Ha, look at me. That's right, I'm a bit of a paranoid personality. I'm very vengeful. Lu Laodao hurriedly waved his hand. No, brother X, I knew. Li Yunqin laughed. Old Lu, if you want to learn my technique, you must first understand what kind of person you are. This technique of mine is called the study of the mind. So you don't need to say these things. I know I have a problem, and a very serious psychological problem. But that doesn't matter, I can control it. Continue talking about Long Taoyi. Knowing that he is such a person, it's very easy. In my place, every paranoid personality disorder person is the best knife, sword and killer. He originally held a grudge against Wang Xiangxiao for marrying Qiao Duanhong. Not only did he hate Qiao Duanhong, he also hated Wang Xiangxiao. But he didn't know it. Now that Qiao Duanhong is gone, and Wang Xiangxiao has come to find him, he feels even more aggrieved than before. You gave your best years to that person. So now he most hopes that Wang Xiangxiao will flatter him carefully and quickly hand over everything he has. At this time, Wang Xiangxiao is playing hard to get. Then, I will slightly guide and hint him through other ways, and the hostility in his heart will become stronger. He suspects Wang Xiangxiao, and this time he will let her down again. He feels that she is indifferent just to take advantage of him. He always wants to get it, but can't get it. Love gives birth to hatred. When Madame Qiao went out today, I have asked Yin Shuerhua to hint to her for many days. Today she wears red. It's bad luck to pass the court. Wear red. Red. It's also the color of wedding dress. What will happen next? Now you will see it. After Li Yunqin finished speaking, he got up. Let's go home. It's cold. Lu Laodao opened his mouth slightly and followed behind him, as if he was sleepwalking. Just like this, he killed another person. When they arrived at the alley in front of the Dragon King Temple, they found that there was already a waiter waiting in front of the door with 2 food boxes. The two of them walked around, but the waiter waited for an hour. Seeing that the two of them finally came back, he hurriedly got up from the wall. You two are back. Shopkeeper Wang asked me to bring it to your mansion, so I waited in front of the door for a while. Lu Laodao had never received such hospitality, so he hurriedly took it. The waiter cupped his hands to the two of them and was about to leave. Li Yunqin stared at him and suddenly said, "Little brother." What did you see when you were waiting for us just now? The waiter was stunned and looked at Li Yunqin, as if he had seen a ghost. Then he breathed a sigh of relief and gave him a thumbs up. Brilliant, really brilliant. No wonder our innkeeper told us to be careful when we arrive at the two Dao masters' residences. That's right, I saw something. The waiter was also a young man. After waiting here for an hour, he had long been impatient. Knowing that these two were the honored guests of the shopkeeper, he also wanted to please them. He stood still and said vividly, "Just now, I was a little tired from waiting, so I leaned against the wall and sat on the ground, wanting to rest for a while. In the end, I was half asleep and half awake, so I had a dream." "What did you dream of?" "Hi. I dreamed of a very beautiful young master, wearing a white robe, passing by here. When he reached the door, he stopped. He looked into the door for a while, smelled it and saw me again. In my dream, I thought that maybe he had something to ask me, so I remembered. Guess what happened? The young master in the dream was not human. He smiled at me and opened his mouth. Oh my God! His mouth was grinning from ear to ear, a mouth full of sharp teeth. He was a monster. I was so scared that I fainted. I don't know how long it took for me to wake up. You said that this dream, sigh. I was so scared that when I saw the two of you, I was still in a daze. Especially when I saw you. You were also good looking. And you were also wearing a white robe." Li Yunqin smiled. He said, Then it's nothing. I was just afraid that you would be wronged here. Since there's nothing else, let's go back. Here, take this piece of silver." Seeing him smile, the waiter thought that he liked his story, so he smiled as well. He took the silver piece, said that he would come back tomorrow to collect the food box, and walked away with light footsteps. Seeing that he had left, the smile on Li Yunqin's face disappeared without a trace. Lu Laodao carried the food box, so happy that the wrinkles on his face bloomed like chrysanthemums. When he opened the door, he turned his head and saw Li Yunqin's expression. He was stunned for a while, then asked, "Brother Xian, what's wrong?" Li Yunqin was silent for a while. "Old Lu, these few days, you have to think of a way to make yourself more interesting." Chapter 54. Lu Laodao put the last piece of marinated beef into his mouth and drank the wine in one gulp. Then he wiped his mouth, removed some meat from his white beard, and sat up straight. Li Yun looked at the dishes on the table and asked, "Don't you want to eat some more?" The old man shook his head and looked straight at him. "Come on. I'm full. The dishes from Munanju over there are actually really good." Li Yunqin sighed. "If you were really full, I would have told you. I'm afraid this is the last good meal you'll have." Lao Dao's face tightened, carefully trying to figure out his expression. Li Yunqin spread out his hands. "Don't look. It's not a joke. It's a long story. I can tell you some of it, and some of it is my privacy. I'll tell you what you can understand, and you can fill in the blanks with your own imagination." Lao Dao always couldn't fully understand some of the words in Brother Xian's words, so he just nodded. He knew that Li Yun had something very important to tell him. Before that, he let him eat a good meal and drink some wine. Lao Dao felt that the matter seemed to be a bit serious. "The matter I have to start from that night. That night, I was chased by two retarded people." It was afternoon when Li Yunqin began to tell the story. The sunlight shone into the small pond in the courtyard, and the green lotus leaves were almost transparent, casting a shadow on the bottom of the pond. When he was about to finish, the sky had already darkened. The last bit of the setting sun lingered in the northeast corner of the courtyard, and smoke could be seen not far away. The air began to be filled with the aroma of food, and occasionally women in the back street could be heard laughing and scolding their disobedient children. There was a burning cloud on the horizon, golden yellow, like a whole mountain carved out of topaz. On such an ordinary spring evening, in such an environment full of human feelings, Lao Dao heard Li Yunqin's last words. He wasn't dreaming in the afternoon. He saw the ninth young master, and then he fainted. He came looking for you. And, who knows when he will come looking for you. If you're afraid, you can move out first. Lu Laodao blankly sat by the stone table for a long time, not knowing if it was because he was shocked by this matter, or because he was already scared out of his wits. A man-eating great fiendish demon actually existed. Furthermore, they would come knocking on his door. According to Brother Xian, although he looked like a human, his humanity was almost non-existent. Li Yunqin saw that he wouldn't wake up for a while, so he stood up and broke a bamboo leaf to play with. Lu Laodao's reaction was easy to understand. Everyone in this world knew that cultivators existed, and they imagined them to be mysterious and unfathomable. Even for people like Song Yunzi and Pun Nanzi, who stayed in the city and were often seen by people, mortals would think that maybe at night, the celestial master would go far away to kill the demons. In his previous world, something unexplainable happened. People said that it was aliens, and that it was a secret government experiment. But in this world, there was only one explanation for unusual things happening, which was mysticism. People also believed in ghosts and demons. The number of ghosts and demons was definitely more than cultivators, but less than humans. Mortals built cities and farmlands, recuperated, built their own dynasties, and became more and more prosperous. Thus, the demons gradually retreated to the remote mountains and forests. Occasionally, there were powerful cultivators who mingled in the human world. Some were good, some were evil, and they left behind many legends. But in the end, they were only legends. Demons wouldn't come to the city and stand on the street, telling people that they were a different species, come and see. Therefore, people believed in such things, but most people wouldn't be able to see them in their lifetime. Or maybe they saw them, or even lived together, but they didn't know. Therefore, Li Yunqin could understand Lu Laodao's feelings. The thing in the legends had appeared in the most realistic way. For every mortal, this was a huge shock and a sense of unreality. After a while, Laodao said, "I'm not leaving." Li Yunqin turned around. "Oh, I'm not leaving." Laodao reached for the wine. He wanted to take the cup first, but after thinking for a while, he directly took the wine pot. He opened the lid and drank a mouthful, wiped the water off his beard and said, "Hey, I, Laodao, have stayed in this Dragon King temple for my whole life. Now, Brother Xian, you're here again, and you've taught me so many things. Although if you don't say it, I'm embarrassed to call you Laodao, but in fact, Brother Xian, you're my second master. If I leave now, I'll first be sorry to my master, and then, I'll be sorry to you, Brother Xian. I'm not leaving. I, Laodao, am already this old, how long can I live? Even if I die, I'll die here. I'm not leaving." The sky darkened, and the bamboo forest became even darker. Li Yunqin looked at him with sparkling eyes. "You're really not leaving? You might die." Laodao took another mouthful of wine, waved his hand, and his sleeves rustled in the wind. He said with a heroic spirit, "Brother Xian, don't provoke me. I know that your past must not be simple. Well, I saw you kill people today, and Laodao, well, I was really frightened and felt that you were going to become a devil." He put the other hand on his thigh, drank up the wine in the wine pot, and slammed it on the table. "After that, Laodao, I thought, well, didn't you treat me well? That Madam Qiao, Madam Qiao, Madam Qiao, and Xiao Jiaming are all inferior to pigs and dogs. This kind of people, well, I killed them." His body swayed back and forth as he spoke. I've been a good-for-nothing for most of my life. This time, Lu Laodao must follow Brother Xian well." With a plop, he fell to the ground. There were 4 pots of Mu Nanchun in the food box of Mu Nanju, and he drank all of them. Li Yunqin sighed, walked up to him, and lifted his foot to kick his leg, which was still on the stone bench, down so that he could lie down more comfortably. Then he squatted down, and looked at Lu Laodao carefully. He had a gray beard and a wrinkled face. His skin was loose and dull, and there were even faint age spots on his neck. This was the image of an old man who had been tortured by life for decades, which was common in this era. But such a cowardly old man had been with him for so many days. He didn't hate him. Li Yunqin stared at him for a long time, and then reached out to take a chopstick from the stone table on the side. He wiped the chopstick on Laodao's body, and then broke it with a little force with his fingers. The sharp fracture was shimmering in the newly fallen night, because of the grease that had not been wiped clean. Li Yunqin put the tip of the chopstick on Laodao's neck. This lasted for a quarter of an hour. He stood up and casually threw the half chopstick aside. Humph! An old man. His voice rang out in the courtyard, which was particularly clear, because the sound of insects had disappeared at some point. Li Yunxin's body suddenly stiffened slightly. He stood where he was and was silent for a while. Then he slowly took 2 steps forward and looked back. Behind him, a white-clothed man with a face that was far more handsome than his opened his mouth and revealed a charming smile. "You're still so interesting, little guy." Chapter 55. My good friend, long time no see. The handsome young man's voice suddenly changed. If one listened carefully, it was still the same gentle and pleasant voice. But if the emotions conveyed by this voice were cold and heartless during the day, then at this moment, this voice was suffused with a strange feeling of weariness. Whether it was the ending, the turn, or the ups and downs of the tone, it seemed to have an indescribable rhythm. From this moment on, Li Yunxin exerted all of his abilities and the subtle intuition that his 2 lifetimes of experience had given him, because he knew clearly that the biggest crisis since he was born had come. His eyes didn't miss any details of the other party. The movement of the facial muscles, the slight trembling of the eyelids, the subtle upward curl of the corners of the mouth, and the slight tilt of the shoulders. The 9th young master was satisfied with what he said just now. Right now, this big demon was temporarily in a state of pleasure. The 9th young master walked briskly in the yard. His robe sleeves fluttered under the moonlight, looking very beautiful. Then he walked to Lu Laodao and smiled. "This place is not bad. Little guy, I came here in the afternoon." His eyes flashed with joy and novelty. "But we are friends. So I didn't break into your house. You see, we are friends, ha ha ha." Li Yunxin maintained an appropriate degree of meekness, but he didn't make the other party feel humble. He realized that the 9th young master was sincere when he said those words. At least he was sincere at the moment, especially when he mentioned the word friend. This big demon didn't have many friends before. That was a normal thing, right? There weren't many demons as strong as him, so it was normal that they didn't know each other well and didn't have friends who matched their status. That Bai Yunxin was also a big demon, and she seemed to know the 9th young master. But the problem was, she didn't seem to see the 9th young master as a friend. Li Yunxin still remembered the greedy gleam in the eyes of the seemingly harmless girl when she heard about the whereabouts of the 9th young master. Li Yunxin could understand the 9th young master's fondness for the novelty of friends. But if it was not his illusion, or if there was a difference in the expression of emotions between humans and monsters, he would have realized that the joy of the 9th young master seemed to be more than just having a friend. He noticed that the 9th young master would squint his eyes slightly when he expressed his joy. His eyebrows would droop slightly. If Li Yunxin had not focused all his attention on his reaction, he would not have noticed it at all. Narrowing his eyes meant that he was sad. The frown on his face meant that he was still a little angry. Both of them were the fleeting and subtle emotions that were mixed in the joy just now. Perhaps even the 9th young master himself did not notice them. However, these subtle expressions could not be hidden unless one had undergone extremely strict and long-term training. It was not directed at his own emotions. Li Yunxin realized that there was something else about the 9th young master. Maybe it was his opportunity. He remembered this in his heart and smiled gently. "It's best that you treat me as a friend. When I saw you just now, I thought you were going to eat me." He took 2 steps away and said, "I knew you passed by here a few days ago. And you ate 2 people. The concubine of the prefectural magistrate, right?" When he said this, the 9th young master had already taken a step away, with his back facing him. But when he heard this, his head suddenly turned 180 degrees and stared at Ming Qi from behind without moving his body. "Ha!" He squinted his eyes and his pupils seemed to shrink slightly. "You also know about this." Li Yunxin's heart skipped a beat. This demon was really temperamental. This was already the most pleasing and agreeable thing he could deduce from the current situation. Seeing the 9th young master's round pupils had become oval, and the color of his eyes became lighter and lighter until they became light yellow. Li Yunxin still acted as if he did not notice all this and laughed. "Ha! Guess what happened next? Li Yaoxi, that idiot, unfortunately provoked me. I'm going to kill him today. An idiot who asked for trouble. He didn't know that he had to die if he provoked me. The ninth young master's head did not move, but his body slowly turned back. He stared at Li Yunxin for a while, and his eyes gradually turned black again. Interesting. He clapped his hands and laughed. You are an interesting friend. That person is as interesting as you. I can't bear to eat him. He laughed as he walked to the stone bench and sat down. He casually picked up old Taoist Lu, grabbed his left arm, and was about to put it into his mouth. He said, You said it was a passing, but it wasn't exactly a passing. Li Yunxin hurriedly whispered. Wait, ninth young master. The expression on ninth young master's face turned cold when he was interrupted. This person is also my friend. Li Yunxin laughed. You know, these people are boring. But I don't have the supernatural power of the ninth young master, and I can come and go like the wind. Someone has to take care of me. This Lao Dao is rare, and I don't get tired of him. Oh, I see. The ninth young master actually threw Lao Dao away, and seemed a little relaxed. I say. You are such an interesting friend. Why would you give it to an idiot like me to eat? It's firewood and has no juice, so I don't have to force myself to eat it. I thought it was your kind intention. You said I passed by the city of Wei? Not really. The ninth young master was bored, and he used his finger to draw on the stone table. Every time he drew, he left a mark. I live near the city of Wei. After saying this, he looked at Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin knew what he was thinking, and his face showed just the right amount of surprise. It didn't make him look stupid and boring, but also flattered him. The ninth young master also lives near here? Guess how I can find you? I really don't know. Tell me, I'm very curious. The ninth young master laughed. That night, did you see my real body? This sentence reminded Li Yunxin of that night. It was raining heavily. Outside the door, there were huge green scales, the sound of steel rubbing against each other, and yellow eyes as tall as a man with long and thin pupils. A huge and terrible monster. You didn't see it clearly, did you? He laughed again, and squinted at Li Yunxin, as if he thought of something funny. I saw you being chased by 2 Taoist priests into the door, but they were too noisy and annoyed me. Did you see me before you entered the door? You saw me. But, well, I was also very bored that night, and I was hiding from an annoying guy. The more he talked, the more excited he became, and there was a dangerous light in his eyes. I still remember they said you have a treasure here. Chapter 56. Li Yunxin's heart skipped a beat. When the ninth young master said that he was actually outside that night, he already had a bad feeling. Now it really came back to this matter. But he understood that the ninth young master really thought it was fun, because the smile on his face was a happy smile, and the light in his eyes was full of strong curiosity. The light was so strong. Li Yunxin understood that if he went against the ninth young master's wishes when he was in the best mood, the demon would definitely fly into a rage. Perhaps he had overestimated himself by flying into a rage. The most reasonable reaction was to tear himself into 2 pieces with a cold face. He would no longer be interested in looking at the treasure, so he would wrap himself in a cloud and leave. This bitch, Li Yunxin sighed in his heart. He put his hand into his clothes and took out the jade slip that he kept close to his body. This is it. A jade slip. If the ninth young master likes it, you can take it. After saying this, he was shocked. The jade slip emitted a milky white halo. A second later, a dot of light flickered and floated into view. Then it was a string of words that he was used to. His conjecture was indeed correct. This thing needed demonic power to open. He had been looking at the things that were open to him in the jade slip for the past few days. But the remaining demonic power in the jade slip came from the short contact with the ninth young master, and by Yunxin. So it was quickly used up. Until today, after being in contact with this big demon for so long, it was finally opened again. It was the first time the ninth young master saw this thing, and he was very happy. He reached out his hand and took it. He looked left and right, and then fiddled with the jade slip with his fingers. Li Yunxin knew that he couldn't open it. No one in this world could open it except him. Sure enough, after fiddling with it for a while, he lost interest. He pretended to give it back to him. Li Yunxin restrained himself. He didn't want to show a trace of desire. He didn't know if the ninth young master would play with him again, and refused to give it to him like a kid. Halfway through, the ninth young master suddenly tilted his head. How do I open this? I don't know at all. Li Yunxin shrugged. I just treat it as a treasure and keep it close to my body. Maybe it will be useful. I see. The ninth young master looked at Li Yunxin and smiled. Then why do you keep it? It was useless. Since we are friends, I little nine, am not a petty person. Oh, I'll give you something in exchange for this piece of trash. In the future, we'll keep it for ourselves. When I want to eat you, I remember that we've exchanged things. I definitely won't eat you alive. After he finished speaking, he casually put the translucent jade slip into his bosom. But he didn't take out his hand. She fumbled around in her bosom for a while and frowned slightly. Then, she jerked her hand out. With a rustling sound, she actually took out a leather armor. Li Yunxin stared at his chest for a while. Spring sun, thin shirt, where did he get this thing? He naturally knew about Sumera mustard seed and interspatial storage bag, but they didn't exist in this world. Previously, when Bai Yunxin gave him the small sword, he also fumbled around in his sleeve for a while. Then, he exerted a little force and pulled out that extremely sharp sword. Could it be that this kind of big demon had a secret method that he didn't know about? He looked at the leather armor again. It was just a thin piece of armor. It was sleeveless and could be worn close to the body. It was so thin, it looked like a CT film of him at that time. But there was another detail. The ninth young master took it out and scratched it casually. It seemed that he felt that something was stuck on it and wasn't satisfied. After scratching it a few times, the leather armor was still intact. Li Yunxin subconsciously looked at the stone table, where his fingers had left a few marks. He sighed in his heart again, but pretended to be happy and said, "Thank you, ninth young master. I'll definitely keep it close to my body. But you said that you live nearby. Where do you live?" The ninth young master's pupils suddenly shrank. He stared at him. "Why do you ask this?" "Oh, you just said to me. You want to explore my mansion." He interrupted Li Yunxin's words. His pupils had completely shrunk into a thin line, and he suddenly took a step forward. Li Yunxin really didn't know which words, which tone, and which look of his angered him. Or perhaps this great fiendish demon was simply temperamental in nature. Cold sweat suddenly appeared on his back. He held his breath, not letting himself look too excited, and said with a smile, "Ninth young master." Before he finished his words, the ninth young master suddenly turned his head and stared straight at the northwest. After staring for a moment, he waved his sleeves and slapped Li Yunxin to the wall. Then, wrapped in a cloud of mist, he flew up to the sky. When the demon fled, the strong wind blew the bamboo leaves in the small courtyard, making a rustling sound. It took a long time for the wind to calm down. After a while, Li Yunxin, who was leaning against the wall, slowly let out a moan. "What the F***ck?" First, he gently moved his arms and legs to make sure that there were no fractures in his limbs. Then, he slowly inhaled and exhaled deeply to make sure that there were no fractures in his ribs and lungs. Then, he closed his eyes and carefully felt for a while before he slowly stood up from the ground. F***king crazy. A demon is a F***king demon. Just now, any ordinary person, even if his real strength was similar to what he had shown, would have been slapped to death on the wall. Fortunately, he was in the transcendent state. There was a difference between the painter's transcendent state, and the Taoist priest's transcendent state, and the swordsman's transcendent state. The similarity between the three was that their spirit was strong enough, and they had a deep understanding of their own sect. They could shift their focus to abandon the 7 emotions and 6 desires, instead of the cultivation of their spirit. Starting from the transcendent state, the cultivator's main mission was to pass the God's test. This was because there were many cultivation methods above this state that could not be practiced by those who did not have a clear mind. The transcendent state was a watershed. Countless cultivators were stopped at this point. This was because they could not abandon all kinds of emotions and desires. When they practiced more advanced cultivation methods, It was easy for them to be possessed by the devil. When the Taoist priest and the swordsman cultivated to the transcendent state, they already possessed great supernatural powers and power. Riding on a crane to fly in the sky, riding on a sword to escape far away, these were the signs of a cultivator in the transcendent state. They could break free from the shackles of the earth. In addition to the various techniques used to fight with humans and demons, their power should not be underestimated. If a cultivator at this stage was well prepared, without any interference from others, and with the help of the right time and place, it was not difficult for him to destroy a city by himself. However, the painters, of course the painters and Taoist priests in the past, cultivated to the transcendent state, they could not be compared to the Taoist priest and the swordsman. When the two met on a narrow path and suddenly fought, 5 painters might not be able to defeat a Taoist priest or a swordsman. Although the true state and the mystic state might be different, but those things Li Yunxin had no way of knowing. Even so, when a cultivator tempered his spirit, he tempered his body too. Li Yunxin could not unleash the strength of the transcendent state, but he had the capital of the transcendent state, a body that was far stronger than an ordinary person, or even an ordinary cultivator. That was why he did not lose his life this time. The 9th young master merely waved his hand out of anger. If it was not Li Yunxin, but someone else, who took his thin armor just a moment ago, he would have been killed by the 9th young master. He stood up and walked a few steps before he slowly walked to the stone table and sat down. He stared at the sleeping Lu Laodao, but he was not actually looking at him, he was arranging the thoughts in his mind. The jade scroll of enlightenment was gone. Well, there must be a way to get it back. But that was not the most important thing right now. The 9th young master knew where he was. Of course he could run. But he did not doubt that the armor given to him by the 9th young master was the same as the sword given to him by Bai Yunxin. He could not run away. He had to get along with him. The problem was that the time they had spent together was too short. Even though he had tried his best tonight, he still annoyed him at the last moment and almost got killed. What was the problem? That psycho said that he lived nearby, but he had to guess how he found this place. He had to understand him. He had to try to understand him. He had to know him like the back of his hand, this psycho. Li Yunxin stared at Lu Laodao for a while and suddenly raised his eyebrows. He thought of something. When Lu Laodao woke up, the sky was already bright. After getting drunk, he actually slept all the way until dawn. It was probably because Mu Nanshan was indeed a good drinker. But his body was a little sore, as if he had fallen. The window was half open, and there was a light fog in the courtyard. The morning air mixed with water vapor, and the fragrance of plants entered his lungs. Lu Laodao felt comfortable all over. But when the comfortable feeling passed, he felt more clear-headed. Laodao's face turned bitter. He remembered that he had boasted yesterday that he would never leave this place. Oh my God, Tui! Drinking is a hindrance. I said things that I didn't think of properly. He could not lie down when he thought of this. He lifted the thin quilt, wiped his face, combed his hair with his fingers, and rushed to Li Yunxin's main room with a sad face. As soon as he entered, he saw Brother Xian eating his sandwich. It was to use 2 pieces of fried steamed buns with vegetable leaves, sauce meat, and eggs, and eat them with your hands. Previously, Laodao was curious and asked about the meaning of this name. Brother Xian told him that the 3 enlightened referred to the 3 things in the middle. The meat was soy sauce, the vegetable leaves, and the non-meat was the egg. These 3 things included all kinds of food that the public could eat, and took the meaning of 3, which meant that the 3 gave birth to all things. Eating these 3 things was actually eating all kinds of food in the world, and it was to cultivate the mind. Using 2 pieces of mantu to eat was to strengthen the body, so that the vitality of these 3 things would not run out. Eating these things was cultivation, and it was also to understand one's nature. This was the 3 enlightened. As for the word cure, it carried the meaning of research and cultivation. It further indicated that this wasn't just eating, but also cultivation. The 2 were combined into one named sandwich. Laodao was suddenly filled with respect, thinking that the disciples of the big sects were indeed different. He used to refuse to eat like this, thinking that it was undignified and like a child. But after listening to Li Yunxin's teachings, he was enlightened and made sandwiches for the two of them every morning. Brother Xian seemed to be very happy that he could do this, but Lu Laodao always felt that there was a strange smile on his face. Li Yunxin was eating while quickly flipping through a stack of books on the table. Lu Laodao glanced at it and was surprised. Brother Xian, why are you reading the temple annals? Li Yunxin didn't raise his head. I have something to tell you first. Hold the door and don't get excited. Last night, the monster came and wanted to eat you. But I told him that you were my servant. So he didn't eat you. If he comes again in the future, you have to play the role of my servant. Okay, close the door. It's scary outside. I have something important to do. It was the first time that Lu Laodao heard Li Yunxin talking to him at such a speed, and he was stunned for a long time. He opened his mouth to ask, but saw a stack of books on the other side of the table, and realized that Brother Xian didn't sleep at all last night. So he took a deep breath and slowly went out of the door, letting the turbulence in his heart subside. That demon actually came last night. Brother Xian saved his life again. Li Yunxin saw Lao Dao quietly went out and continued to read the temple annals. There was a temple annals in the Daqing State dynasty. Li Yunxin used to know county annals, but he didn't hear about temple annals until he came here. The Dragon King Temple in the Daqing State dynasty was a strange thing. He couldn't find a similar institution or organization from his original world to compare it. As long as there was land, a temple could be built, whether it was a collection of money from believers or a big family. After the temple was built, they had to report to the government and explain what it was for. Other temples didn't have any special restrictions, but the Dragon King Temple, there was an obligation. The temple attendant of the Dragon King Temple had to record the rain that year. It didn't mean that he had to record what happened every day, but it was about how many people came to the temple to pray for rain on a certain day, and when it rained. When it was a big event, the temple attendant had to record it. Li Yunxin speculated that it was because the Daqing State dynasty didn't have a weather bureau. So a master patted his head. Well, let the Dragon King Temple do it. Anyway, it was to pray for rain. But other than that, the temple annals also recorded something else. At some point in time, a certain temple attendant began to record down the number of people who went missing around the time of a certain rain. Once it started, it slowly became a habit and was kept from generation to generation. Li Yunxin spent the whole night reading through the records of the temple in the past 140 years. Then he closed the last book, rubbed his forehead with his fingers, and walked out of the door. Lu Laodao wasn't there. He probably went to clean the vestibule. These days, he had to go to court and was framed, so there were fewer pilgrims coming to the vestibule, so he neglected to clean it. The fog had dispersed, and Li Yunxin sat on the stone steps in front of the house, basking in the sun for a while. He felt that he knew the real identity of the ninth young master. Last night, the ninth young master had said it clearly, but he was only worried about the jade slip of enlightenment, so he only remembered it, but didn't think deeply. The ninth young master said, "Did you see me before you entered the door? Haha, you saw me. But well, I was also very bored that night, and I was hiding from an annoying guy." He said that he saw him before he entered the temple, and he was hiding from someone. On the rainy night when he was chased by two swordsmen, before he fell into the temple, he did glance at the eaves of the temple. In that short moment, Li Yunxin saw a corner of the eaves in the distance with the help of the electric light. On the eaves, a dark green Qi-wen glanced at him in the heavy rain. The ninth young master, not a demon. He was Qi-wen, the ninth son of the dragon. Chapter 57. Although Li Yunxin was already mentally prepared for the things related to fiends in this world, after deducing this fact, she still felt a strong sense of surprise and uneasiness in her heart. The dragon had 9 sons, each different. This meant that the dragon was naturally lascivious. Wherever he went, he would have sex with humans, with all kinds of animals, giving birth to 9 sons with different appearances. The problem was that legends about dragons, phoenixes, And all kinds of famous demons and ghosts had existed a long, long time ago in his previous world. It was so long ago that people couldn't figure out if those magical creatures really existed in ancient times, or if they were just made up by people. So, after coming to this world, he could accept the existence of these things. Maybe it was because they were two different planes or dimensions, and because of some rules, they both gave birth to those magical creatures. However, the matter of the dragon giving birth to 9 sons was definitely fabricated, because although the legend of the dragon's 9 sons had a long history, it was recorded in a dynasty called Ming. The emperor was curious about the dragon's 9 sons, so he went to ask his ministers. The ministers also heard of this legend, but they didn't know much about it. Therefore, based on his vague impression, he filled in the gaps in his mind and came up with a few accurate dragon sons. Then this story slowly spread, and everyone knew about it. But the things that were made up in his previous world really existed now. Li Yunqin found it hard to understand. He also faintly felt that something was not right. But this subtle sense of incongruity was quickly replaced by another worry. The dragon had 9 sons, which meant hell there were 8 more. Another point was that the power of faith could make the demons stronger. Since in this world, everyone knew about the dragon had 9 sons, and even made up their images everywhere, then they must be extremely powerful. What was the Bai Yunqin that made the powerful 9th young master afraid? No. Something was wrong. There shouldn't be something in this world that could endlessly grow stronger. If this world became prosperous in the future, billions of people knew about the dragon's 9 sons. How powerful would they be? A stable real world, this situation shouldn't happen. Or, this world was on the way to collapse halfway. He sighed. The collapse of the world? It wasn't something he could control. Then it would at least 1,000 years later. But the technology tree of this world seemed to be a little crooked. If it continued to develop at this rate, it would probably stay at this level for a long time. Li Yunqin stood up, took a clean set of clothes from the clothes rack on the west side of the courtyard, went back to the house to change, and then walked to the front yard. The old Taoist was chatting with a middle-aged woman. With his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes were slightly narrowed, and he was stroking his beard. He had the demeanor of a sage-like master. He seemed to have calmed down a little, and was not as dazed as before. Li Yunqin nodded to him. Master, I'm going out for a while. Lao Dao saw his eyes and knew he was going to the Qiao family. He quickly winked and said, Brother Xan, come here. There's something interesting. You should come and listen. When the woman saw Li Yunqin, her eyes squinted and she smiled happily. Everyone liked a handsome child, not to mention she had an unmarried niece. She waved her hand. Come, let Granny tell you. At her age, in Li Yunqin's previous world, she would probably want to be called elder sister. But here, she could really call herself Granny. Li Yunqin knew Lao Dao wouldn't stop him just because it was interesting. So he smiled kindly. Granny, tell me what's interesting? The woman looked at Li Yunqin with a smile and lowered her voice. You too be careful these days. After saying this, she pointed at the Qiao family and lowered her voice even more, as if she was afraid of being heard by something terrible. It's haunted. Ah, Li Yunqin said in surprise. It's so scary. The woman was very satisfied with his performance and said, Granny now knows that you've all been wronged. The Qiao family must not be good people. You see, when the high-ranking official was interrogating you, didn't he die? After that, the Qiao family also died in the court, huh? Oh, this is retribution. What retribution? It must be a vengeful spirit that wants to kill us. A look of concentration and excitement appeared on the woman's face, and her eyes emitted the kind of passionate light that only appeared on middle-aged women when someone was listening carefully. Our neighbors all say that Lao Dao and the little Taoist, you're so handsome, are not the kind of people who would harm people. How can the people who harm people support Grand Celestial Master Jiavan and Dragon Lady Shiwana? So you see, those 3 people said that people died in the house. It must be Qiao Jiaming, that wastrel, who wanted to seize the family property. So he beat all the loyal servants to death. TSK, how did he kill them? It is said that they were strangled to death with white silk. After they died, they were not satisfied, so they cut off their heads and pushed them to the old servant. TSK, how could they do it? Li Yunxin and Lao Dao looked at each other. It was really a waste of this woman's talent not to be a screenwriter. When she finished talking as if she had seen it with her own eyes, she calmly asked Lao Dao, "Don't you think so?" Lao Dao nodded. "Well, if that's the case then." But the woman had no intention of listening to his opinion. She continued, "So the vengeful spirit came to kill us. Every night in the Qiao family's house, there is a woman laughing." Li Yunxin thought for a moment. "Grandma, there is a daughter in the Qiao family. Qiao Jiesin, who was possessed by the cat monster, was still in the house. Li Yunxin had gone there several times at night, but he told the cat monster not to make too much noise and ruin his business. The cat monster was very obedient. Although he felt it was a little strange, he didn't take it to heart. When he met Yu Meng and returned to the city, the cat monster had been very obedient, so he gradually got used to it. Recently, because he was focused on preparing for the final blow in the court, he didn't go to see the cat monster anymore. Last night, he wanted to explain to her, but the 9th young master came. Was there something wrong with them? When the woman heard what he said, her eyes widened. Yes, there was a girl in the house. She was also a pitiful person. But guess what? Recently, the girl who lived next door to her house heard a group of women laughing. That voice was eccentric. It didn't sound like a human voice. Chapter 58. Hearing this, Li Yunxin was not in the mood to listen anymore. He casually put his hands on his stomach, and there was not even a hint of pain on his face. "Ouch, my stomach hurts. You talk first." Then he went out the door. Outside the door was a side street, and across from it was the high wall of the Qiao family. He was going to climb over the wall, but after listening to the woman, he decided to go through the front door. If it was really haunted, then he had to go through the front door first. He was not at all worried that something would happen to the cat demon. He was just curious, because he had never really seen a haunted house. Li Yunxin had heard his parents talk about haunted houses, feng shui, and qi of the earth, but he had never really experienced it. A piece of land flat and empty existed there. It was just a piece of land, but if you placed something on it and built something up, these differences in height would form a force. Therefore, it was possible to produce or tie something down. Then it would encircle the place, and it would become a system, forming a unique ecosphere. Of course, this was what Li Yunxin called it, because he felt that these 3 words were much more concise than those that were difficult to pronounce, and did not have a detailed definition. In other words, a house with people or a house that was haunted had, in a sense, life, and contained some kind of law. Usually, one entered the house through the front door. Therefore, if one wanted to fully experience or observe a possible haunted house, it was best to go through the front door. Li Yunxin thought that this was probably caused by Mrs. Sanhua. But it was a good thing. It was just in line with his curiosity and desire for knowledge. To go around the back to the front door of the Qiao family's house, he actually had to walk a long way. It was about 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and there were already many people on the street. With his hands behind his back, Li Yunxin walked briskly for 10 minutes into the alley in front of the Qiao family's house. He did not notice that he was being watched by another person, Qiao Jieming. In fact, it had only been one night, but Qiao Jieming already felt that he couldn't hold on any longer. In the court, Li Yunxin's cruel and evil expression was still vivid in his mind. It was as if the words "none of you can escape" were still ringing in his ears just a moment ago. Talking tough was Qiao Jieming's specialty, but it was usually limited to talking tough. But that Li Yunxin, he really dared to kill people. Thinking of that, he felt cold sweat all over his body. Especially when he saw that Madame Qiao was stabbed to death by a yamen runner in front of him, and he escaped in the chaos. He didn't know how Li Yunxin did it. However, he felt that if he had the chance to do it all over again, he would definitely run as far away as possible. He would never have anything to do with that scary guy. Previously, the bailiffs had been looking for him all over the city, but now they had all stopped. Xiao Jiaming only felt relieved. But he didn't know what this meant. Yin Pingji had accepted Li Yunxin's threat and wouldn't protect him. However, this wise idea disappeared after he didn't sleep for a whole night. In order to quench the irritation in his heart, he drank half a kilogram of Maotu. Xiao Jiaming planned to escape from the city of Wei. He needed to get some money. Although the Qiao family was gone, they still had some assets. Not to mention those gold and silver utensils. Just the jewelry and beads of the Qiao family were enough for him to squander for a while. Therefore, Xiao Jiaming wandered around the Qiao family early in the morning. He felt that he had to explore the situation first. He didn't want to run into a few men who were waiting for him and be taken back again. In this way, he saw Li Yunxin. Wine could make him brave, which was good stuff. When he saw Li Yunxin, Xiao Jiaming was squatting behind a century-old locust tree, holding a small rough porcelain wine jar in his hand. The first reaction of seeing him was to shiver and subconsciously want to escape. But this feeling quickly disappeared, and after he drank another mouthful of wine, it was replaced by a surging hatred, because Li Yunxin didn't find him. He also had times of negligence. He was still a human. He was a human, not a demon, and didn't know any magic. He was just lucky. Well, he killed the prefectural magistrate. As for how he killed him, well, who had the patience to care? He was just lucky. He was still just a mortal. His mind, which was paralyzed by alcohol, skipped a few key facts and only focused on the most clear and intuitive things. Li Yunxin was walking to the Qiao family. He didn't find him. He could kill him. Xiao Jiaming drank another mouthful of wine and threw the porcelain bottle on the ground with a backhand, leaving only a broken stubble. Then, clutching the thing, he stumbled after her. Many people noticed this man who was full of wine early in the morning, but they didn't pay much attention to him. In such an era, the efficiency of information dissemination was still extremely low. Even such a big event as the prefectural magistrate's death, there were still many people who didn't know about it. But another person took a special look at him. This person was a woman who had been standing on the street. In terms of clothes, she was actually very ordinary. She wore a white dress that was common for women in this era, and this season, and covered with a light blue chiffon coat. With such a dress, if she held a round fan in her hand, she would be a weak girl from a humble family. But this woman tied a ribbon around her waist, and her whole temperament was raised. She had the tenderness and cuteness of a girl, but also a hint of heroism. Looking at her face again, you would find that she only combed a simple Taoist bun and inserted a wooden hairpin. But 2 strands of smooth black hair hung down from her cheeks, adding a little femininity in her solemnity. As for her appearance, it was hard to describe her appearance. Passers-by could see her face. They would never be disgusted by her appearance. But they would never have any shocking or obscene thoughts. It was as if when they saw her, there would be a fuzzy cloud in their mind, blocking the thought of, is this woman beautiful or ugly? Now this woman was standing under a tree on both sides empty-handed, and there was no one around her for a few steps. In this small space, she seemed to be a world of her own. She looked at the passers-by coming and going, and then saw Xiao Jiaming's movement in the distance. She gently tilted her head and made a sound of surprise. Interesting, she said. In fact, this interesting was said calmly, with almost no fluctuation of tone. It was as if the colorful world of people in front of her was like a floating cloud to her. But in this floating cloud, she saw a small cyclone. Interesting. It was just a little more interesting than not being interested at all. But even this was enough for her to lift her feet and follow up. Although the city of Wei was a big city, it couldn't be like the era of Li Yunxin, where there was no soil on the roadside. The place where the woman stood was under the tree, on the yellow ground. Because it hadn't rained for a few days, the ground was covered with a layer of dust. But after she walked away, there was not even a footprint there. The soles of the woman's feet were always separated from the ground by an imperceptible distance. She was treading on air as she walked. Chapter 59. The street in front of Qiao's house was slightly wider, allowing 2 carriages to travel side by side. On the other side of the street was an open canal. The canal was lined with bluestone slabs and planted with some short trees. Li Yunxin didn't know what the name of the tree was, but he saw some thumb-sized red fruits hanging between the tender green branches and leaves, exceptionally attractive. After walking for a few minutes, he could see the cornice of Qiao's house. Along the way, there were some children playing with the red fruits, but as he got closer to Qiao's house, there were no more people. Finally, Li Yunxin stopped in front of Qiao's house and looked inside with his hands behind his back. The black lacquered door was tightly shut. There was a pair of stone lions at the door, and a big flag on each side. On one side was written Wei City's Hongfu Escort Agency, and on the other side was written Wei City's Hongfu Escort Agency. Li Yunxin looked for a while, then walked to the door and pushed it. It opened with a push. It opened without a sound. He glanced inside and frowned. When he sent Qiao Duan home back, he walked through this door once. If he remembered correctly, there should be a screen wall when he entered from the front door. Now the screen wall was gone, and there was a tree. This tree, without leaves, was thick enough for a person to wrap his arms around, and had many branches. But the bark was extremely smooth, shining like jade. On the branches, it was full of gold ingots. There was no wind, but the shining gold ingots on the tree were flashing, as if tempting people to pick them. There was a demon when something abnormal happened. Li Yunxin understood this. He closed his eyes. Normal cultivators, unless they used special means to open their inner eye or yin-yang eye, couldn't see nether spirits directly. But since Li Yunxin absorbed the power of wish in the temple, he could see nether spirits. The first time he saw Qiao Jiesen's faceless ghost, he noticed this abnormality. But he wasn't a person who liked to make a fuss, so he didn't take it to heart. The power of wish from incense was something exclusively enjoyed by demons. He, a living person, absorbed it, so it was reasonable for something abnormal to happen. At this time, he realized that he must have seen an illusion created by the monster. He could see ghosts directly, and when he stepped into the illusions created by the monsters, he could see them more clearly and realistically. This was also the reason why cultivators were reluctant to open the yin-yang eye, because it's easier to be confused. But since he was a cultivator, he naturally had the means to see through the mystique, as long as his realm was high enough. Li Yunxin was at the transcendent state, which was high enough for ordinary ghosts and spirits in the mortal world. So he closed his eyes for a moment and opened them again. The tree full of gold ingots had disappeared. A dried corpse stood upright in front of the screen wall, swaying slightly. Although it was a mummy, it still had eyes. Not only that, but she also had a pair of watery eyes with distinct black and white parts. Because they had no eyelids, they looked like two white-black beads embedded in their eye sockets. They were now staring at Li Yunxin motionlessly. If the dried corpse had more muscles, he would have seen that its cheeks were tightly clenched. Come on, take the bait." Li Yunxin heaved a sigh and closed the door. He took a few steps and kicked it over. He asked, "Did the one inside ask you to guard the door?" The mummy was obviously in a panic. Its big, watery eyes were rolling around, and its whole body was trembling. It was trying to exert its power, so that it could enchant Li Yunxin again. So he unleashed his force. It was indeed the kind of qi of a powerful cultivator that was released by the tiger's body. A cultivator's qi and spirit were always reserved. But it didn't mean that they couldn't release their qi. Suddenly, the dried corpse truly felt the power of a transcendent state cultivator, and it immediately stopped moving. Li Yunxin saw that it was muddle-headed, so he guessed that it was also a small monster that had yet to gain intelligence. He ignored it and continued to walk into the courtyard. Everything was normal as he walked forward, until he passed through the front yard and entered the backyard. As soon as he passed through the moon gate, he heard someone talking. The voice was familiar. It was Qiao Jiesen's voice. The tone was also familiar. It was Mrs. Sanhua's voice. Then he heard her say in a strange tone, 3 views. I will tell you my 3 views. My outlook on life, the world. Values? That's the 3 views. But the 3 views. Bah. Sit tight. I will tell you something. Li Yunxin stood outside the door, and listened for a while with his hands behind his back. This cat monster, or should he say Mrs. Sanhua, she really had some tricks up her sleeve. The first time he met her, she knew about Taoist dancing. Later, when Li Yunqin asked her how she knew about it, she only said that she couldn't remember. The cat monster was using Qiao Jiesen's damaged skin, and she seemed to have some mental problems. Therefore, even Li Yunqin couldn't tell whether she was telling the truth or not. Now that he was listening outside the door, he heard her telling. Because of some accidental opportunities, wild monsters gained some spiritual wisdom, so they had the heart to cultivate and pursue Tao. But the divine heart method passed by the celestial beings was not easily seen, even by the wild Taoists in the secular world, let alone these strange creatures. Therefore, even the most basic method of meditating and refining qi was very precious to the monsters. Some monsters lived for a long time and encountered some opportunities, so they could also figure out some cultivation methods. This kind of monster could impart the method to other monsters. After imparting the method, they would have disciples and grand disciples. They would gather in one place and gradually become more powerful, and they might even cause trouble. What Li Yunqin heard from her was probably the method she figured out herself. It was a little rough, but it was really useful. It was just that this cat monster seemed to remember what Li Yunqin had warned her before. She used the name of 3 grand methods to talk about her own method to some unknown thing. It seemed that in the few days when he wasn't here, this cat monster used some unknown method to gather a group of monsters and became a proper Mrs. Sanhua. It seemed like she was about to open up her own altar. If it was an ordinary cultivator who encountered this kind of thing, they would definitely shout, "How dare you, demon!" and rush in to kill. But when it came to Li Yunqin, he only felt that it was interesting. First, he was influenced by the beautiful legends of Fox Immortal and Flower Fairy. Second, he clearly knew where the upper and lower limits of his ability were. If there was a problem, it wouldn't be too late to deal with it later. At this time, he just wanted to see the scene of demons dancing wildly inside. So he walked to the door of Qiao Jiesen's original bedroom and pushed it open. As soon as the door opened, Mrs. Sanhua's voice came to an abrupt stop. Li Yunqin saw that Qiao Jiesen was sitting cross-legged on a wooden table opposite the door, her neck straight. One hand was placed in front of her lower abdomen, and the other hand was pinching her middle finger and thumb. Holding it in midair, she stared at him. And in front of her, on the ground, there was a red-crowned rooster, a white-furred red-eyed rabbit, a black cat, and a gray mouse lying on the ground. These 4 animals seemed to be fascinated by Mrs. Sanhua's method. When they heard the sound of the door opening, they still hadn't come back to their senses, and were still lying on the ground motionlessly. But the cat monster stared at Li Yunqin for a while, then turned around and jumped down from the table, crawling under the bed, only revealing a pair of eyes. "Huh? Grandpa, I'm talking, huh? I remember the 3 views, Only then did the 4 animals on the ground realize that something was wrong. For a moment, there was chaos, and it was very lively. The rabbit jumped down from the bed, and the rooster flapped its wings, wanting to fly out of the door, but it was afraid that Li Yunqin was standing there. When the black cat saw the mouse, it endured for a while, but in the end, it couldn't fight against its natural instincts. It meowed and pounced on it. The mouse was brave, and with a squeak, it crawled onto Li Yunqin's foot, put its 2 thin front paws on his ankle, and looked up at him with its 2 small black eyes. Li Yunqin knew that the cat monster was afraid that he would blame her for gathering evildoers to bring disaster to the world. But he was not in the mood to care about this. He was not in the mood to talk to the cat monster. Now he only raised his head slightly, looking up. A face without any facial features was less than 10 centimeters away from his face, as if it was staring at him. The neck behind the face was very long, all the way to the roof. Qiao Jiesen's ghost was climbing on the roof. She was also listening to the method. Chapter 60. Ever since he saw Jiesen's ghost that night, she never appeared again. Li Yunqin once wondered if she was also imprisoned outside the magistrate's office, and became a member of the evil spirit array. But after spending 2 hours looking at all the faceless ghosts, he was relieved. Xiao Jiesin was not among them. The appearance of ghosts was their original appearance. Their clothes were also a part of them. Changing a ghost's clothes? That was impossible. Now, she had actually come here. Most ghosts were muddle-headed and acted according to their instincts when they were alive. She came to find him probably because she had a good impression of him and was obsessed with him. Now that she had come to the cat demon's place, it was probably because her skin was still here. Li Yunxin found it interesting that something like this had happened. He reached out his hand and poked Jessen's face. The ghost's neck suddenly shrank back, and she once again clung to the roof. "Come out. I don't blame you for this kind of thing," Li Yunxin said to the cat demon under the bed. As he said that, he picked up the gray mouse and threw it out of the door. What is this person's title? Most animals that had gained intelligence would also have a vague understanding of their own identities. According to common sense, the cat demon should give them a title when she preached. The cat demon blinked her eyes. Seeing that Li Yunxin was really not angry at her, she rolled her eyes. Title? There's no title. Grandpa gave me a name. Haha, Grandpa gave me a name. Li Yunxin knew what she was thinking. She looked silly like a mental patient. But she was not stupid when it came to big things. If Li Yunxin gave these beasts a name, it would mean that she wasn't angry at her anymore. But the Grandpa made him uncomfortable. In the journey to the west, the monsters called the traveler Grandpa Great Sage. Now he was called Grandpa, but he could not get used to it. He said, "Don't call me Grandpa. Call me King." The cat demon blinked her eyes and crawled out from under the bed. She seemed to be very satisfied with this title. She giggled as she sat on the bed and said, "Oh, hee. The great king bestows a name. Hee. Li Yunxin glanced outside the door. This gray-furred rat really did understand human nature. It lay on the steps and didn't leave. He thought for a moment and said, "Your name is Shuck." The thoughts must be smooth and unobstructed, but it must also restrain the bestiality of animals, and have long achieved the meaning of the great Tao. When the gray rat heard this, it clasped its paws and bowed 9 times, then lay there motionlessly. After saying this, the big black cat meowed and rushed to the mouse's side, but it did not pounce on it. Instead, its 2 front paws left the ground, and it stood up, staring at Li Yunxin with its 2 yellow eyes. Li Yunxin glanced at its lower body and knew that it was just a female cat. He thought for a moment and said, "You can call him the sheriff." Warning meant that you had to constantly remind yourself not to forget to cultivate. Zhang, Chang, and Chang Chang meant that you couldn't be half-hearted and have no patience. The path of cultivation was fraught with dangers. Since we are fated to meet, don't let it down. The black cat hurriedly put down its front paws and bowed 9 times. It glanced at the rat, licked its lips and stopped moving. Li Yunxin looked at her and snorted. "What are you thinking? I will give Shek a name first, and he will be your senior brother. If you dare to have evil intentions towards me again, I will skin you alive." The black cat hurriedly pressed down its ears and rubbed back. Li Yunxin turned his head and pointed at the red-eyed white-furred rabbit. "You do it." The rabbit hurriedly jumped onto the steps. "You are a rabbit, so you will be called CC. 2C. Li Yunxin thought for a moment. G refers to the foundation of the building. You used to be timid, but I want you to be steady in the future, just like CC. The rabbit put up its ears, chewed with its 3-petaled mouth, and also bowed 9 times. Finally, the big rooster trotted over with its head held high. Li Yunxin thought for a moment. "As for you, forget it. Let's call you Shanji. I won't tell you the name first. In the future, when you become a human and someone calls you Brother Shanji, you will understand my painstaking efforts." The big rooster also pecked 9 times. Li Yunxin waved his hand. "Well, when I came here, there was a retarded person following me. I guess he has already entered the door. The 4 of you go to the yard and use your skills. I said that monsters with intelligence are born to bewitch people. I want to see how good you are. Don't kill him, I still need that person." No one knew if the 4 understood Li Yunxin's intention, but they just looked at each other and rushed out in confusion. At this time, Li Yunxin walked to the table, pulled out a stool and sat down. He sighed. Tell me what happened. Let's talk about the corpse in front. You can't have dug that thing out from the ground. Besides he pointed to the ceiling. Do you know that she is the original owner of your body? What are you going to do? The cat monster always talked incoherently, and this time was no exception. It took Li Yunxin nearly a quarter of an hour to figure out where the corpse came from. Originally, there were only 4 servants left in the Qiao family, and 3 of them were killed by Meng Ao. The remaining servant girl wasn't easy to get along with either. She knew that her master's family had lost the case in court and was on the brink of death. Thus, she had evil thoughts and wanted to run away with the belongings. Originally, the cat monster didn't care about these things and only played with people in the house. But the servant girl was greedy and wanted to get the miss. Li Yunqing could understand. In this era, it was hard for a woman to get promoted. She couldn't be an official, she couldn't do business, and there was almost no chance to change her fate. Now that she was involved in this matter, it was hard not to go crazy. So she didn't leave after taking the money. At night, she wanted to take the things that the miss was wearing. Who would have thought that when night came, according to the cat demon, a cloud of mist would roll in and envelop the little servant girl inside. The woman screamed twice and then went silent. The cat monster waited until the cloud flew away before she dared to look. The servant girl had turned into a dried corpse. The cat monster thought that the dried corpse looked cute and wrinkled, so she tapped it and turned it into a demon. At this point, Li Yunqin widened his eyes. Let's not talk about the cloud first. According to the cat monster's description, it shouldn't be the 9th young master, but some demon that passed by. Although it was too much of a coincidence, it was not impossible. In fact, there were some other things that had happened recently, but they weren't the most important. He was surprised that the 3 flower goddesses just poked the mummy's head, and that thing became a spirit monster? He asked about this in detail, but the cat monster couldn't tell him anything. She only said, if you remember, just tap, hee. Most of the time I can't remember. Listening to what she said, it seemed that she had some kind of supernatural power that he didn't know about. But now she lost her mind and was in a trance, sometimes not. Chapter 61. This Mrs. Sanhua made Li Yunqin feel that things were not that simple. He put it aside and asked Xiao Jiesin. In fact, they couldn't get anything out of her. The faceless ghost was muddle-headed, although it was easier to communicate with the 3 flower goddess, because they were both not very smart. They didn't actually say any earth-shattering secrets. She was frightened a few days ago, so she ran away. She couldn't tell what she was frightened about. Li Yunqin looked up at Jiesin on the roof, thinking about how to deal with her. Just at this moment, she saw Qiao Jieming smiling with a crooked mouth, drooling as he stumbled into the backyard. The broken wine bottle in his hand was nowhere to be seen. His eyes were blank, obviously bewitched. Li Yunqin was in the house, but he pretended not to see him. He ran a few steps with a strange smile, saw an old tree in the yard and pounced on it. He pounced on it, hugged it, took off his pants, straightened his waist, and pierced between 2 branches of the old tree, doing it. The bark of the old tree was rough, and Xiao Jieming used a lot of strength. After a dozen or so times, his lower body was already a bloody mess. Everything happened so fast that Li Yunqin was dumbfounded. Seeing this, the cat demon laughed and clapped her hands. Hey, this is fun. Li Yunqin slapped her back. Stay under the bed. At this moment, the woman walked to the gate of the Qiao family. The sky suddenly turned dark. Of course, this was how she felt. A moment ago, it was warm in the morning, and the next moment it was midnight. But although it was midnight, it was not particularly dark, because a series of big red lanterns were hung in front of the Qiao family's gate. The warm and festive light dispelled the fear brought by the darkness. She was standing at the gate, but she could already hear the faint laughter inside. It was the laughter of young girls, 3 or more. There was also the smell. It was like the smell of a wedding in a rich family, the smell of wine, meat, and firecrackers. Everything indicated that it was the wisest choice to walk into the mansion at midnight. There would be a soft and dry bed, or a charming and lovely maid. The woman thought for a moment, then really walked in. She crossed the threshold and walked 3 or 4 steps before the door quietly closed behind her without a sound. She saw a skinny servant girl staring at her with a smile. The maidservant's eyes were wide open, as if there was no upper or lower eyelids. Her eyeballs were about to pop out. But in such an environment and atmosphere, it didn't seem out of place. Instead, it was very normal. She smiled, the corners of her mouth stretching all the way to her ears, revealing 2 rows of gleaming white teeth. This smile hung on his face like a mask without the slightest change. The maidservant was like a puppet whose joints were not very flexible. She bent her waist slightly and stretched out one hand to point the way for the woman. The woman stopped in front of the servant girl and stared at her expressionlessly for a while. Then, she shook her head slightly and walked in the direction that the servant girl pointed. In the night, the entire Qiao family's courtyard was lit up. Kongming lanterns floated in the sky. Candles and incense sticks were placed beside the pond and on the rockery. White paper money floated in the wind on the branches, but under the yellow light, it forced out the aura of wealth. The woman walked a few steps and heard a man's laughter in the wind. A man in colorful clothes walked towards her with his hands behind his back, his head held high, and a smile on his face. The man's steps were vigorous and light, as if he was stepping on extremely elastic cotton. His hair was combed into a high bun, tied with a large red silk bun, fluttering in the night wind. It didn't fall down even when it was in midair. As for his face, he had huge yellow lips. It almost took up half of his face. His lips were smooth and glossy, as if they were oiled. But this man's appearance, in such an environment, didn't seem out of place. He reached out a hand to the woman. The woman hesitated for a moment, then took his hand. The man let out a clear and resounding chuckle, then pulled her to the backyard even faster. As they neared the backyard, the sound of laughter and heavy breathing became even more distinct. After passing through the moon gate, the woman saw the source of the sound. She saw a naked woman lying on a stone table with her legs propped up high, and a man like a bull in heat was grabbing the woman's ankle, doing his best to shake it. The woman stopped, slightly frowning. The man beside her gently let go of her hand and began to take off his colorful clothes. The woman frowned as she looked at him, then turned her head and looked forward. In the night, in front of her was the door to the inner chamber. The door was also hung with lanterns. 2 stone stools were placed on the steps in front of the door. One of the stools had a blood-red mist, and the other had a writing brush. The woman stared at the 2 stone stools, frowned, and said, "Why did you harm him?" When the woman walked in, Li Yunxin was about to kick Qiao Jiaming away. He could not be bothered to see what kind of bewitchment this rotten person had. He only felt that the 4 new names he had bestowed were really good at playing. Animals were not very perceptive, but this did not prevent them from using their keen instincts to sense what you wanted the most, and then let you see them. In fact, whether you were an abstinence or a Taoist, the instinct to reproduce had always been hidden in your body and genes. These monsters used this matter to make a fuss, and it could be said that they had accidentally guessed correctly. When Li Yunxin saw this woman, he also frowned and stood in place. Most people who were bewitched by ghosts would be delirious. A cliff was right in front of you, but you only felt that it was a small ditch, and you could cross it with a step. But this woman, her eyes were very clear. He only had time to think about who this person was, why she had come here, and what was unusual about her body, when he saw her turn her head, stare at him, and ask, "Why did you harm him?" As soon as this sentence came out, the woman, the stone table, the lamp, the paper money, the man in colorful clothes, and the night faded without a trace in an instant. Qiao Jiaming was stunned for a moment, and finally saw the tree in front of him. But before he could think about the question of, where did the beauty go? And why am I here? A huge tidal wave of pain swept over him, violently spreading from his lower body to every corner of his body. The extreme pain prompted a miserable howl, but as soon as the howl reached his throat, it was blocked because of the spasms caused by the pain. He knelt on the ground and covered his lower body with his hands. In his blurry vision, He saw the figures of Li Yunxin and another woman. He subconsciously wanted to pounce on Li Yunxin, but because he staggered, he slanted towards the woman. But the woman did not dodge. She only frowned at Xiao Jiaming's bloody lower body and raised the middle and index fingers of her right hand, writing something in the air at a speed so fast that it could not be seen clearly, and then pointed at him slightly. With a bang, Xiao Jiaming's whole body turned into a pool of blood, splashing over half of the courtyard. Li Yunxin frowned and sighed. "Miss, you killed my test subject just like that." But the woman did not answer him, and only asked, "Which sect are you a disciple of? Why did you harm people?" Chapter 62. Li Yunxin shook his head slightly and wiped his face with his fingertips. Then he flicked off a small piece of flesh. The clothes he had just changed into, which still had the fragrance of honey locust, were now stained with blood. Then he sighed again and spread his hands. "It's the first time we met. I didn't tell you your name, and I didn't know the details. Then I angrily asked why I hurt people. Fellow Taoist, be reasonable. This is not good." In the few seconds just now, Li Yunxin quickly and carefully observed this woman. The result was quite shocking. He walked into the Qiao family openly, because he was not worried. He was not worried that someone would break in, and he would not know anything. The Taoist of the Shangqing Danding sect and the swordsman of the Lingshu sword sect were only in the emptiness realm. He might not be able to fight them head-on, but he had 100 ways to mess with them. If the two of them had walked into the courtyard, he would have been the first to know since he was already on guard. But he didn't realize it until this woman came here. This woman was at least in the same realm as him, and she seemed to be a playful person. First, she entered an enigmatic state and looked at the scenery. Then when she wanted to jump out, she jumped out. Just now, she killed someone with a move of her finger. She killed decisively and calmly. Judging from the technique, it was not the art of painting. Then it should be the art of Daotong. Swordsmen killed people with their swords, while Taoist priests were good at drawing talismans. When one's cultivation reached a high level, he could draw some simple talismans out of thin air with spiritual power, just like what she did just now. Li Yunxin wanted to see her expression and capture her thoughts. But with just a glance, he realized that this woman did something to his face. He could see her face clearly, but he couldn't see her face clearly. It was as if there was a cloud of fog in his head. It was probably some kind of magic treasure. His parents told him about magic treasures, but this was the first time he saw one. This was normal. Since there was the word treasure in magic treasures, they must be rare. If any cultivator could have one or two of them, they wouldn't be called magic treasures. Therefore, he could only read this woman's words, tone, and body movements. The first conclusion was that it was okay. He wasn't a pervert with antisocial tendencies, and could barely be classified as a normal person. Of course, he couldn't rule out the possibility that he was a deeply hidden pervert. He said this sentence calmly and confidently, without the panic of using witchcraft to harm people, but being seen through by fellow Taoists. The woman frowned slightly, looked at him for a while, and said in a low voice, "Interesting." Li Yunxin rolled his eyes. The ninth young master also said that he was interesting, and so did Bai Yunxin. The woman said he was funny again. If it was the first time he met her, he might have felt that she was an unfathomable master and trembled with fear. However, after meeting monsters like the ninth young master and Bai Yunxin, these human cultivators, there was no pressure at all. He pointed at himself. "I am Li Yunxin. How should I address you?" A second later, the woman straightened her chest imperceptibly and tilted her head back slightly, which meant that she was in a more formal mood. "I am Ling Kongzi, the head disciple of the Langya Grotto Heaven." She hesitated for a while, and added in an inexplicable and imperceptible happy tone, "You can call me Lu Ling when you are in the secular world." Caught it. It was just a little emotional fluctuation. A head disciple of the Langya Grotto Heaven, who would find anything and everyone interesting. A noble identity. There were a total of 18 grotto heavens in Daotong. Every head of the grotto heaven was a disciple of the master of calligrapher. This woman claimed to be the head disciple of the master of calligrapher. If she was not lying, She could almost be on an equal footing with anyone below the heads of the 36 sections. The legendary grotto heavens were all fairyland that people couldn't imagine. Miss Ling Kongzi, who came from such a fairyland, now walked into this haunted house to enjoy the scenery, and said that he was interesting. And when she introduced her secular name, there was a hint of joy and novelty. An old man who brought a huge sum of money to experience life in the slums casually saw the moss between the brick cracks, the broken roof with leaking rain, and lying on a wicker chair on the street to enjoy the sunshine on the mountain, would feel really beautiful. Just like that, the image of a fair, rich and beautiful woman was outlined in his mind. Li Yunxin laughed. Well, Miss Lu, you see the situation is like this. You should know that we, the secular cultivators, also have our own Taoist field. This is my Taoist field. I don't know what your attitude is towards monsters and the like. But in my place, I personally think there are good and bad monsters. I don't know if you have heard of the phrase, education without discrimination. Since monsters and human beings are both inclined to Tao, then if I have the conditions, I will help them. Animals with spiritual intelligence, if there is no rule and guidance, are likely to go on the wrong path, eating human flesh and blood, harming the villagers, and in the end, they may be eliminated by an expert like you who walks in the secular world. They kill people, and they don't want to live. You see, this is such a tragic result. Cultivators like you and I practice the divine heart technique. Where does the divine heart technique come from? It is passed down by the celestials. In the eyes of the celestials, are we really more noble than those animals in our eyes? I don't think so. Since the celestials can mercifully teach us the method of cultivation, then do we also have the responsibility to help other living beings who are suffering? Miss Lu, look at this world. Why is there suffering? Because the distribution of resources is unfair. Some people sit on wealth, but still exploit and oppress others. And those who are exploited and oppressed constantly accumulate resentment in their hearts. And in the end, they will always resist. The change of dynasties, I think this is how it came about. This is talking about the human world. If we talk about the whole world we live in, what role do we play? We have the most resources and those monsters. Lu Ling stood and listened to him. In the beginning, she just stood casually. Later, she slightly tilted her head, and a slender index finger slightly tapped in her sleeve. She was thinking, from the initial non-committal to the serious engagement later. She felt that what this young man named Li Yunxin said was actually very reasonable. Although she felt that something was not right, it was also very reasonable. That's why I call this great unity world communism. Humans and monsters, living harmoniously and happily together. That is such a beautiful world. Li Yunxin finally made a concluding speech. So that person just now, is particularly annoying. Why did I say he was a test subject? I originally wanted him to try to get along with these little monsters, who have just gained spiritual intelligence. In the end, what he did, you also know. You are a good person. Lu Ling interrupted him. No need to explain. Li Yunxin's eyes widened. He heard Lu Ling continue to say lightly, what you said may not be the truth, and what you did here may not be as honorable as you said. But you can actually say such insightful words. Let's not talk about whether the doctrine is right or not, but you must have thought about it carefully. People who think about these questions are not bad people. You are a person with a very kind heart. She used an unquestionable tone to define Li Yunxin, and then turned to leave. Since you said it is your Taoist field, then it is your Taoist field. I will go back and think about your words carefully. If there is anything I don't understand, I will ask you. Li Yunxin blinked and stared at her for a while. When she was about to walk out of the moon gate, he couldn't help but ask, Miss Lu, what are you doing in the city of Wei? Lu Ling stopped in his tracks and turned around to look at him. Dao Xian, she said. I am looking for Dao Xian. Chapter 63. After saying this, Lu Ling walked out. Li Yunxin looked at her back and thought for a while, then sighed. What are you talking about? He said in a low voice. If there was another Li Yunxin here, he would be able to tell the complex emotions behind this sentence. To be honest, this sentence provoked him. He was reincarnated into this world. He knew that there were miraculous techniques, and that there might be real immortals. Fortunately, his parents were both powerful cultivators. He didn't know how powerful they were, but now he knew that they were at least above the transcendent state. Therefore, he could learn the Tao of immortals from them, from two experienced cultivators. He didn't take many detours and he was smart. Therefore, he reached the transcendent state when he was a teenager. He didn't think this state was that great when he stayed in the village, but now that he was in the mortal world, he knew where he was. Song Yunzi and Pan Nanzi, who were very powerful in the city of Wei, were only emptiness realm cultivators. The two swordsmen who chased after him and Huai Nanzi were also emptiness realm cultivators. In terms of fighting skills and experience, he was not as good as them. The art of painting at this time was not famous for fighting, but after he was driven out of the village, he grew up quickly. A series of life and death situations soon awakened his old memories. If he went back to face Kong Kurongzi and Chi Songzi, he would have many ways to kill them in the yard. His current cultivation level was very impressive in the mortal world. But the problem was he had to stop. He had lost his parents, and he had no teacher. His parents probably thought that the three of them could hide in the village for a long time. So long that they would have enough time to think about whether or not they should guide their son on the path of cultivation. Therefore, just like the conventional education system of the previous world, when he was told about a state of affairs, he was told only about a state of affairs, and would never go beyond it. The advantage of this was that his foundation was very solid, and he might be able to surpass his peers. But the disadvantage was that once there was no one to guide him, it would be very difficult for him to continue. Even for the cultivators of the Heavenly Abode sect, it was extremely difficult for them to cultivate alone. This matter was not something that could be casually thrown to you, and you would be able to comprehend it just by looking at it. Secret manuals were not teaching materials. From the day he was taken out, he had been on guard against the possibility of someone with bad intentions getting his hands on him. For example, he was cultivating the water cloud force in the transcendent state. He also found another cultivation method in the art saint's illuminating jade slip that seemed to be suitable for him to continue cultivating. It was called the Cloud Ascension Force. The items in the art saint's secret canon were definitely precious techniques. But the problem was that descending cloud force. There were only 25 words in total. The body has 9 orifices of yin and yang, 5 cities and 12 buildings, golden halls and jade palaces, and the clouds. What the hell is going on? Who the hell can possibly understand this? Back when he was cultivating the water cloud force, he could spend 3 days and 3 nights talking about the word natural before slowly comprehending it. When he stared at the 25 words again, he felt that each word contained infinite information, but he could not decipher it. The higher the level of cultivation, the more obscure and difficult it would be. Lu Laodao might be able to learn the basic techniques of the Black Cave sect by himself, but at his level without a guide, it was almost impossible for him to cultivate by himself. Therefore, he regretted that his parents did not give him a reference system earlier. He was also jealous of Ling Kongzi. She had to cultivate her Taoist heart. When one reached the peak of the transcendent state, one had to cultivate their Taoist heart when advancing to the true state. The cultivators in the transcendent state had almost passed the love tribulation. If they continued to cultivate, they would soon face the most dangerous tribulation of all cultivators, the tribulation of vacuum. In this world, the tribulation of vacuum was also known as the heavenly tribulation. It did not mean that there would be lightning striking you, but it meant that people would be lost at this time. Their emotions and rationality might be in a vacuum. You're still conscious, you can still talk and laugh with others, you can still fight with others, but you've lost the motivation to continue cultivating. There were no obvious signs. Many people did not even realize it when they were in the midst of the tribulation. They would only realize that they were facing the tribulation on the day they died. To survive this tribulation, one needed the Taoist heart. In fact, to Li Yunqin, the Taoist heart was an obsession that was beneficial and could be let go of. It was not something that could be achieved with just a thought or an item. If one was obsessed with it, it could give one the motivation to improve, but it would not be stubborn. It could become one's Taoist heart. The strangest Taoist heart he knew was told to him by his parents. A certain cultivator from a certain orthodoxy raised a frog. The frog was an ordinary frog. He found it from the pond and kept it in a clay jar. The Taoist in the transcendent state was married and lived on a small mountain in the sect. Living with him was a wife who cultivated with him, and a son who had just learned how to walk. One day, the Taoist felt that he was about to go through the tribulation of vacuum. He also felt that he had a Tao heart in a blur. Therefore he searched hard. He could not find it in the sect, so he said goodbye to his wife and son, and went to the mortal world to look for it. This time he left for 4 years. During these 4 years, the child grew up and became more mischievous. One day, he went to his father's room to play and accidentally broke the clay jar. Then the frog ran away. The child was afraid that his mother would scold him, so he went to catch the frog, but he accidentally strangled it to death. 3 months later, the Taoist came back. His expression was calm, as if he had been freed. He told his wife that he had accepted many things and was no longer obsessed with the heavenly heart Tao. He planned to enjoy life. He was a Taoist in the transcendent state, and he was already over 80 years old. He still had more than 200 years to live. Therefore, everyone, including the Taoist himself, knew that he had encountered the tribulation of vacuum. But there was nothing they could do, because when the frog was accidentally strangled by his son, the Taoist who was 1,000 miles away held his heart and exclaimed. He frowned and sighed for a while, then he smiled. That frog was his Taoist heart. Now Lu Ling also needed to find the Taoist heart, go through the tribulation of vacuum, and enter the true state. Li Yunxin wanted it too. He had never met a cultivator who was at a higher level than him, so the thought was not as strong. But today, he met Lu Ling, who was looking for the Taoist heart at such a young age. Then he met the 9th young master in Bai Yunxin. His life was threatened. When all these things were added together, he wanted it too. He wanted to continue to prove his Tao. He wanted to go through the tribulation. He wanted to find his Taoist heart. And he wanted to enter the true state. He wanted to settle everything with his own power. And he did not need to be careful and careful. Therefore, 5 minutes after Lu Ling left the yard, Li Yunxin realized he had entered the tribulation. Delusion tribulation. Chapter 64. Most of the bitterness in life came from 3 things: separation from love, resentment, and unattainment. For ordinary people, there was no way to get rid of these things. No one could do what they wanted. People would praise them for being able to endure these things and act like they didn't care. However, for cultivators, especially those with higher levels, the resulting stubbornness would bring serious consequences. Cultivation was not something that could be done in a day, and it was not something that could be put down easily. Something he was familiar with in his previous world, for example, would be working out. Ordinary people were those who never worked out. But when they walked, ate, and got out of bed, their bodies would slowly grow and become stronger. Cultivators were a bunch of fitness freaks who didn't even look at girls in the eyes and only cared about their muscles. They put in a lot of effort and quickly gained strength that was stronger than ordinary people. But if one day he felt that he didn't want to work out or cultivate anymore, he would give up his annual card and become a nerd. He was still exercising. He walked around and reached for the instant noodles on the bedside table. He was still exercising. It was a subconscious process for cultivators to meditate and refine their bodies. But even if he didn't do these things and just walked around in the sunlight, the qi inside his body would still be slowly refined and refined. This meant that once a cultivator entered the tribulation, he couldn't temporarily stop cultivating to avoid the danger. He had to face it, or face the tribulation, or face the tribulation. That was why those cultivators always took the initiative to go through the tribulation. If you didn't take the initiative and let the tribulation find you, then you would probably end up like Li Yunxin. One moment, he felt that his mind was clear, and the next moment, he had entered the tribulation. Li Yunxin felt that this was a bit tricky. This was not the first time he entered the tribulation. He had entered the tribulation of freedom when he was 8 years old. He still remembered his parents' surprised and incredulous reaction. The tribulation of freedom was actually a question similar to, "Why do you exist? What is your purpose in life?" This tribulation was not difficult to pass. For those who focused on Tao, everyone would probably enter this tribulation when they were about to reach the transcendent state. But the problem was, Li Yunxin was 8 years old at the time, and he had just reached the emptiness state. To say that he was wholeheartedly focused on the Tao? As a child, he knew nothing but Tao. Of course, that was his parents' opinion. At that time, Li Yunxin really didn't have any thoughts of focusing on the Tao. Perhaps because of his special identity, this tribulation came strangely. It was also because of his special identity that he survived that tribulation. It was just that the method of transcending the tribulation wasn't what his parents thought it was. Now that he had entered the delusion ordeal because he couldn't get what he wanted, he knew that he was in big trouble. In fact, he always had a thought: this tribulation, to put it bluntly, was the influence of one's mind on the process of cultivation. Perhaps people could control their active consciousness, but they could not control their subconscious. Therefore, unless the problem was completely solved, they would not be able to pass the tribulation. If he could clear his subconscious related to tribulation in a certain way, this tribulation would probably be destroyed artificially. But he couldn't do it yet. Psychology was an extremely complicated subject, and he believed that no one in history had ever been able to do it. Therefore, he had to pass the tribulation. His life was threatened by the 9th young master and by Yunxin. Then he saw Lu Ling and was stimulated, so he wanted to become stronger. A desire that wasn't so strong could be considered as motivation. But a desire that was too strong was delusion. His desire came from his sense of security when he was threatened, as well as his understanding of himself that was different from that of ordinary people. If any ordinary cultivator in this world encountered such a situation, he would probably be more afraid, and there would be no tribulation. But for him, fear might exist, but it only fueled his desire to fight. His temperament, formed by the experience of 2 lives, made it impossible for him to lower his head and submit. Maybe he could pretend to be courteous, but he could never be tamed in his heart. Therefore, there were only 2 ways to pass this tribulation: touch the threshold of the true state, and find his own Taoist heart, or eliminate the threat. Compared to the former, the latter was more risky. He wouldn't do it unless he had no other choice. He didn't have the confidence to kill a big demon, like the 9th young master, with his current strength and resources. He wasn't in a game, and he wasn't one of those spectators who watched other people's lives. He only had one life. Only an idiot would risk his life when there was still room for negotiation. He decided to choose the former for now. He thought he had a shortcut: the power of incense. Maybe with the help of that, he could quickly remove the restriction and then break through to the true state. He stood in the vestibule and thought for a while, then turned to look at the cat demon, Jia Xian, and the 4 people in the yard. He frowned and thought for a while about the recent events and the people he met, and gradually put the thousands of things together. He felt that he needed a net. It was a web that connected many things together. Some lines and dots could already be seen clearly. Some key points were still vague, but he felt that he could find an opportunity to pull them out. Without a guide, he had to face this tribulation alone. It was a bit tricky, but Li Yunxin believed that he could handle it. After a while, he heard the sound of firecrackers in the back street. It was the whip he bought with Lao Dao yesterday. In a few days, this news would spread, and people would say that he and Lao Dao were innocent. It was actually a good thing that people nowadays believed in the power of the government and authority. For example, that Lao Dao and the little brother came back safe and sound after going through the lobby. That would prove his innocence more than anything else, at least in the eyes of those people. That's good. I'll have the power of prayers. Li Yunxin turned around, intending to leave from the back door. But he only took one step before he stopped. He turned around and frowned. Why is it so lively today? he said in a low voice. Someone came in from the front door. Li Yunxin jumped onto an old tree next to the rockery and stood on a branch as thick as a bowl. He had good eyesight, so he could see two people and a horse at the front door. The man and the horse were familiar. Li Yunxin frowned and thought for a while, and then he remembered. Yesterday afternoon, when he walked home, he told Lao Dao how he killed Madame Qiao. When he rested on the stone bridge, he saw a man in black with a knife and a black horse walking slowly. Now there was an old man, sitting on the horse of the man in black. Li Yunxin had never seen Meng Ao, but he could guess that it was him judging from his spirit and the newly wrapped wound. He thought for a while and said in a low voice, "Tell the one at the door not to make trouble, and let them in." Now he welcomed all variables and accidents. He could use it to weave a net. Chapter 65. Is this the place? The man in black asked Meng Ao. His tone was calm and steady. His hand on the hilt of the saber did not tremble at all. He was as calm as a piece of granite. With such a person by his side, the old man should be very calm. But at this moment he seemed a little uneasy. He looked at the street and said, "Yes, but there's nothing else. We should. Don't indulge in evil." The man in black said. As he spoke, he pulled the reins and led the horse and the rider to the door. Meng Ao's legs had been crippled. At least according to common sense, they were crippled. Almost all of his body was covered in bandages. His pale hair could be seen through the gaps of the bandages, like withered grass squeezed out of a stone in winter. That Qiao Jiaming might not be here. The old man said in a hoarse voice, "I think this matter can be considered in the long run." The man in black suddenly stopped and turned to Meng Ao. "The 7-kill saber is not something you practice. You practiced the 7-kill saber and cultivated the killing heart. But what comes out of this murderous heart is the bravery of blood, the bravery of bones, not the bravery of the gods. The 7-kill saber is like a blade, sharp and unstoppable. It's okay for you to cultivate the killing heart. But why did you hide it? You hid in the Qiao family for decades as an escort and a servant. The edge has been blunt, and you no longer have the killing heart. You practice my 7-kill saber. When you meet evil people, you should kill them. If you don't, your saber will be blunt. Just like when I picked you up and met the Yamen runners in the prison. Those people were not good people. They tortured you first, and then pretended to be friendly to you. But if they met someone else, they would have died a long time ago. This would not be the first time they did this. It's fine if I couldn't see it. But since I saw it, I killed them. This is the unstoppable, but the mind is clear." The old man wanted to interrupt several times, but he did not succeed. At this time, the man in black finally paused. Meng Ao hurriedly said, "But Master Ing, the government may be chasing here." The man in black smiled. "Those who stand up for those evil people are also evil people. If they dare to chase after us, just kill them all." The old man did not know what to say. He could only shut his mouth. This happened 2 hours ago. 2 hours ago, the man with the black saber killed his way into the magistrate's prison. Originally, there were not many people guarding Meng Ao in the prison. In any case, Yin Pingji had a backup plan. When Li Yaoxi died that day, he ordered people to treat Meng Ao's wounds and kept him alive with good food and drinks. He planned to let Meng Ao recover in 2 or 3 days before letting him out. Otherwise, what if Li Yunxin, that fiend, lost his temper when he saw the old man's miserable appearance? Although Inspector Yin wasn't so afraid that he would listen to Li Yunxin's words, his heart was beating like a drum. Therefore, there were only 3 jailers in the prison, all of whom had been killed by this man. When he announced his name, the old man was dumbfounded. Black Saber Ingjuran. This man was very famous in Mingjiang Road, where the city of Wei was located. Previously, he had a dispute with the 6 ghosts in the river and chased them like stray dogs. Then, he had a dispute with a constable in Songyuan County and killed him in the morning. This man did not belong to any sect, and no one knew where his master was. When people who had seen him described him, they only said that he had one appearance: black clothes, black saber, black horse. This man's behavior was unpredictable. People in Jianghu said that he was neither good nor evil. In fact, these things were easy to explain. It was not rare for a martial artist to have some tricks and act arrogantly. What was rare was that, no matter how mysterious a person was, there were always traces. For example, when he traveled in Jianghu, he always used money. Those rich people in Jianghu often drank big bowls of wine and ate big pieces of meat. They were originally rich. Those Jianghu heroes often drank big bowls of wine and ate big chunks of meat. They were originally rich. Ordinary martial artists always needed to make money, or they became bandits or guards, or escorts to make a living. But this man, no one knew what he did for a living. No one knew where he came from. No one knew where he had family property. No one knew who he had plundered. And no one knew who had given him financial aid. Even after he killed a public servant and alerted the government, when the government came to investigate him, they didn't find anything. This man seemed to have appeared out of thin air in this world. Now that he came to Wei City and saw the old man, he immediately said, "I heard that you were called Man-Killer Ghost when you were young, and that you used the 7-killing saber. Is that true?" The old man answered yes. Without saying anything else, he carried the old man on his shoulder and walked out. "Your 7-killing saber is actually a part of my 7-killing technique. I heard that you were wronged, so I came to save you. In my life, I can't stand evil people. I also heard that you were framed. I'll take you to find that evil person, kill him, and take you away." Then he put him on a horse, and under the watchful eyes of everyone, he rode the horse and escaped from the pursuit of the other government runners. All the way to the Qiao family, he led the horse along the road. Of course, he didn't see anyone. After a while, when they were about to reach the inner courtyard, Meng Ao couldn't help but say, "Hero Ing, this is the inner courtyard of the women. Right now Miss should still be living there." "You're a man after all." Ing Juren slightly raised his hand and said in a low voice, "The smell of blood." Smashing an adult and spraying it in the courtyard, the smell of blood was naturally strong. Such a strong smell made Meng Ao frown. He opened his eyes wide and shouted, "Could it be that Miss Shi?" Good timing. Ing Juren twitched the corner of his mouth, clenched the saber, and stepped into the courtyard. "Let me show you the real 7-killing saber." Half the courtyard was covered in blood and flesh. A young man in white stood in the courtyard. A black cat, a mouse, a white-furred rabbit, and a red-crowned rooster scampered hastily into a corner when they saw a stranger. The young man stood alone in the courtyard, the corner of his mouth slightly raised, and stared at the newcomer with interest. In fact, there was also a cat demon. However, when Lu Ling came, it had already hidden in the house. Although Mrs. Sanhua was a little stupid, it was not stupid when it came to important matters. It clearly knew what kind of existence it was facing. It should hide in a corner and shiver. The young man said, "I say, you too." But a whistling sound interrupted his words. From 6 or 7 steps away, Ing Juren pulled out his saber and slashed. Pulling out the saber, rushing forward, running 3 steps and slashing down with force, accompanied by a brave shout, this saber. With a bang, it slashed on the bluestone ground. Li Yunqin moved a step to the left. "Hey, you have some skills." This saber slashed the gravel on the ground, and the steel saber collided with the flagstone, making a thud sound. But when Ing Juren slashed with the saber, he did not use all his strength. He twisted his body and swung horizontally, and the saber went straight to Li Yunqin's waist. Li Yunqin tiptoed and took a step back. This saber slashed the air again, so Ing Juren put away his saber and frowned. "Who are you?" he asked in a low voice. "Are you sick?" Li Yunqin's face became cold, and he took 2 steps back. "Who are you?" Chapter 66. At this moment, the horse carrying Meng Ao also entered the courtyard. The old man on the horse had never seen Li Yunqin before, but at least he had seen Xiao Jiaming. He squinted his eyes and hurriedly said, "I'm wrong, Hero Ing, it's not this person." However, Ing Juren had already steadied himself with a solemn expression. He stared at Li Yunqin carefully, and his eyes fell on his hands. His white and slender hands did not look like someone who trained his strength. He turned his head slightly and asked Meng Ao, who was behind him, "Do you know this person?" "He seems to be." Meng Ao thought for a while and hesitated. "The newly accepted Taoist child of the old coffin in the Dragon King temple?" "Taoist child." Ying Juren pondered for a while and looked at Li Yunxin. Saying that he's a Taoist child, it makes sense that he has learned the lightness skill. "Good. Today, I'll show you how to defeat 10 people with brute force." Seeing that he was about to draw his saber again, Meng Ao hurriedly said, "If it's not Xiao Jiaming, why do you still want to kill him?" "Because he deserves to be killed." Ying Juren took a deep breath and slightly relaxed his hand. "I said before that you hid your strength until your saber became blunt. Now look at yourself. When you were young, would you hesitate like this? This person may be innocent, but if he stands in your way, he is not innocent. If you don't kill him, your edge will become blunt. If your edge becomes blunt, it will be difficult for you to improve. How can you draw a sharper saber, kill more evil people, and save more innocent people?" He stared at Li Yunxin. "Therefore, if you kill him today, you'll save the people in the future. Although he's dead, he should feel that his death was worthwhile." Meng Ao stared at him and was momentarily speechless. Li Yunxin's face was originally gloomy. He was very displeased with this person, who drew his saber, without saying a word. But after listening to what he said today, the haze on his face was completely gone. This person is interesting. To be able to say such nonsense so confidently and confidently. This guy had already constructed a worldview system in his own heart that he firmly believed in without a doubt. Even in his previous life, there were so many people with so many psychological problems. Such a person was also a rare treasure. Li Yunxin widened his eyes and stared at him. He felt that the annoyance he had felt when he realized that he had entered the delusion ordeal was gone. It took a lot of effort for him to restrain himself from laughing out loud. He took a deep breath and said, "Your Excellency, you mean to say, for example, you treat me as someone who deserves to be killed, but you can't kill me." After that, I realized that I had made a mistake, and I immediately felt very upset and confused. "Sir, because your thoughts are not clear, you feel that this little setback will affect your achievements on the martial path. So, you decided to kill me to fulfill your wish. Who told you to mistake me for someone else? Is that what you mean?" Ying Juren slowly took a step forward and gripped his saber in a very strange posture. He stared at Li Yunxin like a poisonous snake about to pounce. He nodded. "You are a clever young man. I thank you in advance for all the people I will save in the future." Heavens! Li Yunxin rubbed his forehead. I'm so curious how you formed such an unbreakable worldview." And then, before he could finish, Ying Juren had already pounced on him. This time, Li Yunxin could see that he had used all his skills, experience, and strength. Li Yunxin didn't have much experience fighting martial artists of the pugilistic world. The most skilled martial artists he had seen were probably those few swordsmen, the 6 ghosts of the river, who had taken the pill provided by cultivators that could stimulate their potential, could single-handedly render the people of the escort agency helpless. And now, Li Yunxin saw that Ying Juren's skills were probably above those people's. He might already be a first-class martial artist in the pugilistic world. Now, his slash seemed to carry the force of 1,000 caddies, making the air buzz. Before he even touched Li Yunxin, he already felt pain on his face, as if he had stuck his head out of the car window, and the oncoming gale slapped his face. Ying Juren's slash seemed to have sealed off every corner around him. No matter where Li Yunxin dodged, he would have a follow-up move. He would immediately change his direction and force him into a dead end. There was no way to dodge. He could already see the shining edge of Ying Juren's saber, and the blue veins popping out on his forehead. So, Li Yunxin slapped the saber that was coming at him from the side. The saber that was about to hit his forehead flew out with a buzzing sound, and deeply embedded itself into the trunk of an old tree. This force came so violently and quickly, that before Ying Juren could let go, the handle of the saber had already escaped from his palm. The violent force instantly tore the web between his thumb and index finger, and even his body was dragged to the side. He fell to the ground with a thud and slid 2 or 3 steps away. Li Yunxin retracted his hand and nodded to Meng Ao, who was stunned on the horse's back. Look, this is one man's strength against 10 men. Martial artists. Even the internal energy and reaction speed of a first-rated warrior. How could it compare to the spiritual energy in his whole body? Ingjuren was stunned on the ground for a while before he came to his senses. He immediately rolled over and stood up. When he realized that Li Yunxin had no intention to follow up with another attack, he clenched his fists and said with a trembling voice, "Your Excellency, who are you?" But Li Yunxin only put his hands behind his back and looked at him with interest. "I won't kill you. You can leave." Black Saber Ingjuren frowned and looked at Li Yunxin warily, then glanced at Meng Ao. Li Yunxin felt that he was probably saying, "Didn't you say he was just a Taoist child?" Meng Ao looked at Li Yunxin in a daze, then looked at Ingjuren and blinked blankly. He was probably saying, he smiled again, "You're interesting. I really won't kill you. You can leave." Ingjuren stared at him for a while, then slowly walked to the tree with extreme caution and pulled out his black saber, enduring the pain. Then, holding the saber, his eyes never left Li Yunxin's body. He walked to the side of the black horse and held the reins. Li Yunxin waited in his heart for a while, and that Meng Ao finally spoke. "Heroing this, what about this? Sharpness is indeed important. But if you lose your life, how can you talk about sharpness?" Ingjuren stared at Li Yunxin and tentatively took a step out of the moon door. Li Yunxin did not move. "You and I still have to kill more evil people and save more innocent people. Although this person blocked the way for a while, when I swung my saber just now, my momentum, intent, and chi had all reached the peak. My thoughts were already clear. Why do I have to chase after him and cling to that thought? My sharpness has actually penetrated him. This is killing intent, killing intent." As he spoke, he straightened his shoulders and regained the solemn aura from before. After taking 2 more steps, he finally disappeared outside the moon door. Li Yunxin heard 3 hurried footsteps, the sound of someone turning over and getting on the horse, the sound of someone shouting at the horse, and the sudden acceleration of the horse's hooves. This person was really interesting. Chapter 67. After the sound of the horse's hooves faded away, Li Yunxin jumped onto a branch and looked into the distance. He saw the black horse carrying 2 people galloping along the long street. Not long after, a few fast horses came from afar. The riders were dressed like constables, so they should be following them. However, their speed was far slower than the black horse, so they should not be able to catch up. That Ingju Ran already had the skills of a first-rate expert. Although he couldn't withstand a single blow from the spiritual energy that Li Yunxin had poured into his entire body, once he circulated his inner strength, rushing out of the city gates was not a problem. Meng Ao should be safe. Li Yunxin did not know why the psychopath wanted to take Meng Ao away, but it seemed that he did not mean any harm. He originally thought that the psychopath was paranoid, but it turned out that he was quite flexible. No wonder. If he was just paranoid, he probably would not have lived until now. He had let him go because of a thought, or perhaps because he wanted to have some fun. It was like scattering an interesting seed, and he wanted to see what it would grow into. He watched for a while. Then he turned around and saw that there was another person at the gate of the Dragon King Temple. He jumped off the treetop, told the cat monster a few words, and walked out from the small door behind the Qiao family. As soon as he walked out, he smelled the unique smell of firecrackers, and the red paper was scattered all over the ground. Yin Pingji stood at the door, holding the saber on his waist, talking to a few women. There were a few idlers around, but they did not dare to talk to him. But they were reluctant to leave. They seemed to want to get close to a big shot like Inspector Yin, and maybe they could get some cheap jobs one day. Lu Laodao stood at the side and stroked his beard. The anxiety on his face was gone, and his face was glowing, as if he had temporarily forgotten about the troubles of last night. Thinking about it, the constable of the government personally came to the temple to speak, so the crime must be completely cleared. In the future, the Dragon King Temple, that the constable specially worshipped, would definitely be more popular. and the incense money would naturally be more. Li Yunxin walked through the crowd like a Taoist child who had no sense of existence. He entered the door and went straight to the backyard with a calm expression. After sitting by the stone table in the bamboo forest for a while, Inspector Yin and Lao Dao came in. In just one night's time, Constable Yin seemed to have figured something out. When he saw Li Yunxin again, his arrogance, apprehension, and fear were all gone. Instead, it was as if he was greeting someone of the same generation that he had known for a long time. He cupped his hands as he walked and said, "You're really good. If you want that Meng Ao, just tell me and I'll send him out." Why do you have to kill people with great fanfare? Li Yunxin observed Yin Pingji's expression with interest and lowered his eyes. Black Knife isn't one of my people. I don't have such great divine power. To Yin Pingji, this truth sounded like a mixture of truth and falsehood. Normally, Yin Pingji would take it seriously if a teenager said that. But the words of the person before him, he really didn't dare to believe it. So he changed the topic. Whatever you say. But there's something good today. Both of you are painters. Have you heard of the fisherman fishing old man? Li Yunxin's fingers moved slightly. Of course he had heard of it. This painting was very famous in the secular world. Most of the precious paintings were made by ancient Taoist painters, or by the Taoist painters who were worshipped by the sect of Cave Heaven. However, this fisherman fishing old man was painted by a transcendent realm artist in Jinghua. Of course, the transcendent painter in the secular world couldn't be compared to the Taoist painters who were trained in painting. But this didn't stop some of the high-level painters in the secular world from occasionally being inspired and making excellent paintings. For example, the painter's Taoist name was Dao Meizi. He used to be a painter for the royal family. After enjoying all the glory and wealth, he returned to his hometown and took pleasure in teaching. On a rainy spring day, the old painter wore a straw raincoat and was fishing in a small boat on the river. He drank some wine. When he felt comfortable, he thought of his life and his current situation. He felt that he had no regrets in life and nothing to ask for. So he made this fisherman fishing old man when he returned home. It was said that once the painting was finished, the whole room was filled with light. It was a treasure. Not only was it a treasure for the secular world, it was also a treasure for cultivators. It could be used to understand the delusion ordeal. This Dao Meizi made the best work of his life. He had no regrets and should have been happier. But he drank wine that day and was drenched in the wind and rain. When he got home, he caught a cold. His condition became worse and worse, and soon he died. But this painting was passed down. When Lu Laodao heard about this painting, he raised his eyebrows and showed his excitement. Of course I've heard of it. Is it the work of Master Dao Meizi? Yes, Yin Pingji said with a smile. Master Dao Meizi has a descendant. Now his grandson. Well, he is also a painter. It is said that he is a great painter of artistic conception. He came to the city of Wei. He brought the fisherman fishing old man with him. That is, Master Peijuezi. When Lu Laodao said this, he looked at Li Yunxin subconsciously. He knew that Li Yunxin was very powerful in some aspects. But in the art of painting, although Lao Dao knew that his brother Xian was much better than him, he didn't know how much better. Because the water cloud force that Li Yunxin passed on to him was mainly used to refine the spirit and body. Li Yunxin didn't say it, so Lao Dao didn't know. What he was practicing now was the most authentic and core dharma of Tianxin. He, Lao Dao of the primordial chaos, was indeed a proper cultivator. He wasn't a rogue Taoist in the secular world anymore. But for Lu Laodao, he had never seen the painting Taoists of the grotto heavens and sections. He didn't even know of their existence. As far as he knew, painters were only those in the secular world. According to the states of Daotong and Kenzo, there were 5 realms of Xuanjin void form. But the 5 realms of a painter could not be compared to the 5 realms of a proper cultivator. At least in this world, there had never been a painter above the transcendent state. In Lu Laodao's mind, that was probably impossible. But on this point he was right. Painters in the secular world did not have a guide. Even if they cultivated to the transcendent state, they didn't know there was such a thing as a heart of Tao, How could they break through to the true state? Therefore, at this moment, Lu Laodao didn't know how Brother Xian compared to Master Daomei's grandson, Pei Juezi, even though he was not convinced. But he couldn't help but feel that Brother Xian shouldn't be better than him. Pei Juezi was the grandson of a royal painter. He had seen a lot since he was a child. He had countless famous paintings at home. Even if Brother Xian was born in a rich and powerful family, how could he compare? Lu Laodao couldn't help but worry. He knew that Li Yunqin was a proud person. After Yin Pingji said this, it was inevitable that Brother Xian would be angry with him. Unexpectedly, he saw Li Yunqin laugh. Oh? Mr. Yin came here today just to talk about this? Did Master Pei Juezi come out to travel around the world to broaden his knowledge, and happen to come to the city of Wei to have a treasure appraisal convention? Chapter 68. That's right. Yin Pingji smiled. Master Pei Juezi learned that there are 5 painters of artistic conception in city of Wei, so he decided to stay for a few days. He invited his fellows to appreciate the fisherman fishing old man. This meeting is called Baohua meeting, which means to obtain treasures from heaven and earth. Inspector Yin's words were genteel and proper. No one knew who taught him, or if he thought it out himself. But Lu Laodao enjoyed it very much. He claimed that he was one of the 5 painters of artistic conception in city of Wei, but no one paid attention to him. He had barely touched the edge of the concept, but the other 4 had been famous for a long time, and were extremely wealthy. Now that Yin Pingji mentioned him, and even said that he might be able to attend the meeting, old Taoist Lu's heart was on tenterhooks. He really wanted to go, but he was afraid that Brother Xian would lose face, so he rejected him. But this worry soon disappeared. Li Yunqin smiled. Can I go? Inspector Yin frowned. What are you talking about? I came to deliver the invitation to you too. You are smart. I thought about it last night, and one more friend is better than one more enemy. Judging from young Master Li's temperament, you must be from an aristocratic family. I have offended you before, and I want to take this opportunity to apologize to you. These words were neither humble nor arrogant, and very sincere. Li Yunqin tilted his head and looked at him, then turned his eyes and thought for a while, then smiled. Okay, go. When? Yin Pingji hurriedly took out 2 gilded red invitation cards, and put them on the stone table. Actually, it's tomorrow. It's already been decided. Li Yunqin knew what he meant, and cupped his hands. Thank you for the trouble. Mr. Yin is very powerful. Yin Pingji didn't know what the second sentence meant, but he knew it was a compliment. But after several interactions, he slowly got used to this person's habit. He liked to say strange things that people couldn't understand. This was really like the style of an aristocratic family. As long as they were happy, it didn't matter what others did. He smiled and said politely, "You're too kind." Then he smiled bitterly. Now, I have to go and deal with the matter that Ing Juren left behind. Goodbye. I won't see you out. After sending Inspector Yin out, Lu Laodao quickly returned, and looked at Li Yunqin without saying a word. Li Yunqin raised his eyebrows. What's wrong? Brother Xian, if you Lu Laodao stammered, too embarrassed to say it out loud. Li Yunqin was a clever person. How could he not know what he meant? He waved his hand and said, I wanted to go myself. Do you really think that Yin Pingji is trying to please me? That guy also wants to investigate me. However, he knew that he wouldn't be able to find anything, so he felt uneasy. How could a wily old fox like him be shaken by this king's domineering aura, and bow down to him? Right now he's pretending to be weak, but at the same time, he wants to know more about me. For example, which family I'm from. If my background is really amazing, he'll be happy to kneel down and lick my boots. Right now it's just a matter of whether I dare to go or not. It's not necessarily a plot against me. However, you're an artist, and I'm also someone close to you. If I go to that Baohua gathering, I'll definitely be involved in some kind of relationship. Once something happens, he'll take the opportunity to see if I reveal more information. That's what he's thinking. This is called an overt plot. After listening to Li Yunqin's explanation, Lu Laodao stood there with a sudden realization. Oh, so there's such a reason behind it. Aya. Brother Xian, look at things. Why are things so obvious? Then, what if you rejected him just now? Then he'll feel that my previous unyielding attitude wasn't as invulnerable as I thought. Then he'll want to find more of my weaknesses. Li Yunxin had a faint smile on his face. Yin Pingji is also a scheming B***tch. Unfortunately, he met me. Lu Laodao let out another, oh, and blinked. But Brother Xian Laodao, I've always wanted to ask you a question. Speak. Where did you come from? Laodao continued to explain. At first, I thought you were a brilliant artist. You must be from some rich and powerful family that came out to travel. But you also taught me the method of cultivation. I can't figure it out. You're different from the people from the Shangqing Danding sect and the Lingshu sword sect in the city. Those cultivators don't seem to be human at all. Li Yunxin suddenly burst into laughter. He patted the table and pointed at Lu Laodao. Old Lu, you said I'm more human than them? Lu Laodao opened his mouth in confusion. All right. Let's not talk about this. Let's go out to eat. Then I'll think about how to play with people. The sun gradually set. The shadows of the trees in the courtyard grew longer, but the heat of the day hadn't subsided. Song Yunzi of the Shangqing Danding sect and Pun Enzi of the Lingshu sword sect were sitting in the courtyard. If Lu Laodao saw them now, he definitely wouldn't think they were inhuman. Because the two of them were sitting in this rather exquisite courtyard. Their usual cold attitude was different, and they were whispering like ordinary people. Pun Nanzi whispered, she's also from your Daotong. You really don't have any news about her? Song Yunzi shook his head. She said she's from Daotong, but who is she? You and I call ourselves cultivators, but in her eyes, we might not be cultivators. She's the head disciple of the Langia Heavenly Cave. She has the opportunity to meet the sage. How would I know about such a person? After thinking for a bit, he slightly frowned. Actually, I'm wondering if she's here because of your matter. What matter? Pun Nanzi subtly tilted his head back. If Li Yunxin saw this, he would know that Song Yunzi was on guard. Do you really think I only want to enjoy life in the secular world? Song Yunzi faintly smiled. Your Lingshu sword sect lost 3 people, so now you're the head disciple, right? Pun Nanzi didn't speak and only stared at Song Yunzi. Why are you looking at me like that? Song Yunzi twirled his beard and smiled. After all, I'm a few years older than you, and I've been in the city of Wei for a long time. Although I don't care about cultivation and just want to be a rich man, your Lingshu sword sect's actions in the city of Wei can't be hidden from me. I know all the bits and pieces. You're investigating, and I'm also investigating. We're all cultivators. If someone really dares to kill the 3 of you, who knows when that person won't come looking for me? Song Yunzi lowered his voice and leaned closer to Pun Nanzi. What exactly is going on? Pun Nanzi still didn't speak. I know you're worried, but at this critical moment you're worried. If you don't tell me, when the person in the room comes out and asks about this, I can't help you. Pun Nanzi clenched his teeth. Tell me what you know first. Song Yunzi whispered. The 4 of you went down the mountain to go through the killing tribulation. Pun Nanzi's face was expressionless. You passed your killing tribulation, and so did your senior martial brother Huai Nanzi. Poor Kong Songzi and Qi Songzi, they didn't pass. If you ask me, how do you want to go through the tribulation? I'm afraid it's not the right path. Pun Nanzi stared at him for a while and coldly said, there are a lot of people going through the tribulation. As long as it doesn't involve other people, who cares about the lives of mortals? Song Yunzi smiled. Then how did they die? Chapter 69. Pun Nanzi subconsciously looked in the direction of the house. Song Yunzi waved his hand. Hey, you are overthinking. How could someone like her not know these things? It was definitely not her. I mean, did you hear about what happened in the suburbs? Pun Nanzi felt that he could not keep up with Lao Dao's thoughts. Suburbs? What happened? That farmer's family in the outskirts of the city has lost a lot of cattle recently. They all died at night. Pun Nanzi rolled his eyes. I don't care about those filthy people. Song Yunzi smiled meaningfully. Fellow Taoist, You are not as good as me. Those mortals are like mud scattered on the ground. They are lowly but very useful. They were crippled and harmed. You can see the mark. I heard that Chi Songzi and Kong Kanzi went down the mountain and separated from you guys. A few months later, they died in Qinghe County. A few days later, some farmers said that they were eaten by wild beasts. I found out that your martial brother, Huai Nanzi, died in the forest outside the city of Wei. Don't worry, the corpse was badly mutilated. I had people take care of it. But the neck was bitten off and the head was missing. Your martial brother, Huai Nanzi, had almost reached the emptiness realm. Who could bite off his head? Oh, don't worry, An. Probably after your martial brother died, a powerful demon came to Li Yaoxi's house. In the past few days, the cattle outside the city all died. These days, the price of beef in the city is cheap because of this. The first family whose cattle died was afraid that the government would punish them for killing the cattle. So they lied that they were bitten to death by wild beasts. Later, many people died, so they couldn't hide it anymore. There was also Li Yaoxi. He died for no reason. Song Yunzi's tone became cold. It was a demon. A rare powerful demon. There is more than one. You have only been in the city of Wei for a few months, so you don't know much. But I have been in the city of Wei for many years. Near the city of Wei, there is indeed a powerful demon. Pan Nanzi's eyes widened. Ah! Don't panic. Song Yunzi waved his hand. This demon is quite well behaved. Every year, it only eats a few people near the city of Wei. Most of them are cannibals outside. If that's the case, I don't care. But this time, Li Yaoxi died suddenly, and the cattle outside the city also died one after another. It's not the demon's doing. It should be the other one. If I were to guess, a new soul-devouring demon had a dispute with the original great demon. This was the first time Pan Nanzi had heard Lao Dao talk about this. Surprised, he frowned and pondered for a while. Although this explanation was a little outrageous, it was barely reasonable. He looked at Song Yunzi. You said there's a big demon near the city of Wei. Are you referring to the Wei River Dragon King? Sigh. Indeed, many of those mountain and river gods were transformed from demons. But since they had built temples and conferred god names, most of them were good people. Otherwise, with so many seniors and experts roaming the world, they would have been eliminated long ago. Song Yunzi shook his head. The two sages also said that if they protect the people, that's merit. Just ignore them. As for the Wei River Dragon King, it's really a dragon. Pan Nanzi was shocked again. Shinryu? Song Yunzi smiled. Ever since you came to the city of Wei, you haven't been to the Sanhika Dragon King Temple? You'll know once you go. The clay statues there really have Reiki. It's not the Reiki of a demon, it's dragon chi. How do you know it's dragon chi? Have you forgotten what the Shangqing Danding sect does? We specialize in external alchemy. Our sect has a dragon's skin. It's said that 2,000 years ago, a dragon's scale fell off and was collected by our sect's founder. 30 years after I entered the sect, I had the opportunity to see the dragon's skin and recognized the dragon chi. Later, I got tired of cultivation and came to the city of Wei. I went to the temple at the mouth of the river. That's when I realized that the Wei River Dragon King worshipped there was Shinryu. Since it's Shinryu, how can divine creatures like dragons, cheilants, rocks, and phoenixes harm people? Pan Nanzi opened his mouth. Then, this Wei River Dragon King, why doesn't it care about the demons? Song Yunzi sighed. Since it's a dragon, how can it only stay at the Wei River? It must be summoning clouds and rain everywhere? How can it have time to care about those demons? Then, this Ling Kongzi has come this time to eliminate demons. Two words suddenly came from the room, answering Pan Nanzi's question. Then, the door was pushed open and Lu Ling walked out. Song Yunzi and Pan Nanzi were stunned. They realized that the conversation they thought they were whispering to each other. They must have been heard. You. Pan Nanzi's expression changed very quickly, but he just stood there and stuttered. He was an emptiness realm cultivator, facing a peak transcendent realm cultivator like Dao Tong. He really didn't know how to react. Lu Ling closed his eyes and smelled the fragrance of the flowers in the courtyard. He let out a sigh and said, I don't have time to care about your business. Hearing this, Pan Nanzi felt like he was pardoned and his expression softened. Thank you, fellow Taoist. Fairy. But Lu Ling didn't finish. After this matter is over, go back to the Ling Su Sword sect and ask for forgiveness from your sect master. Pan Nanzi's expression changed again. Fairy. This. Lu Ling looked at his face and nodded his head slightly. Oh, so your Ling Su Sword sect isn't rotten to the bone. I was thinking that if you had acted so casually before, I would have gone to your Ling Su Sword sect to reason with you. Pan Nanzi took 2 steps back, looked at Lu Ling, and said in a low voice, Ling Kongzi, I respect you as a transcendent realm cultivator. That's why I'm being polite to you. But you're a Daotong cultivator, and I'm a Kenzo cultivator, so we're not. Whether it's Daotong or Kenzo, there is always a rule that doesn't change. Lu Ling looked at Pan Nanzi seriously. Although his voice wasn't fast or loud, he easily interrupted Pan Nanzi's words. Don't take the lives of mortals lightly. Mortals are the foundation of a cultivator. Destroying the foundation means becoming enemies with Daotong and Kenzo. I've heard about what happened in the city of Wei. That's why I want to get rid of demons. Do you think it's just demons? Pan Nanzi and Song Yunzi were both stunned. It was true that there was this rule. But just like how emperors in the mortal world said they had to be diligent and love their people, who would take it seriously, it was also true that they couldn't take lives at will. But how could it be considered taking lives lightly if they were killed for the sake of transcending the tribulation? Although it was unreasonable, there were many cultivators who did this. This was already an unspoken rule. For the sake of righteousness, big shots like the Master of the Heavenly Abode and the sect masters would always punish the disciples who had done such things and were found out. But no one would be like Lu Ling and use the first rule to explain things. Unless it was to pick a fight. Pan Nanzi frowned. Ling Kongzi cultivator, did someone in the Ling Su Sword sect offend you? You don't have to use this to make a big deal out of it. My words in the sect still have some weight. Stubborn. Lu Ling sighed. Pan Nanzi didn't hear it clearly and frowned again. This was the last sound he made. With a bang, Pan Nanzi's body scattered over half of the courtyard. Just like Qiao Jiaming. Song Yunzi's face was covered in flesh and blood. He didn't even see how Lu Ling did it. After a dozen breaths of time, he finally let out a shaky breath. Spare me. Lu Ling looked at him. Why do you need to beg me? You didn't take lives lightly. Song Yunzi blinked with difficulty. He heard Lu Ling ask him. The first rule, don't take the lives of mortals lightly, right? Song Yunzi nodded. Pan Nanzi killed people to transcend the tribulation. He violated the first rule and should be killed, right? Song Yunzi could only nod. If that's the case, why is it so difficult? The rule is very clear. What do you not understand? Song Yunzi was stunned for a dozen breaths before he asked. Did you really kill him because of the first rule? Then what do you think? Lao Dao's expression changed a dozen times before he managed to stop himself from shouting. However, he still couldn't help but ask. But you also killed a mortal today. So I'm the one reasoning with you. Instead of you reasoning with me. Chapter 70. After saying this, she walked through the courtyard, stepping on the flesh and blood on the ground, but her feet didn't touch a single drop. When she was almost at the door of the courtyard, she turned back. What's the matter? Song Yunzi swallowed hard. Tomorrow there is a Baohua auction. The fishermen fishing for the elderly will be there. We heard that you. The fishermen fishing for the elderly. Lu Ling stopped and thought. Delusion tribulation? Yes. I thought you must have passed the tribulation. But this painting was made by a secular painter. It's something new. I'll go. Lu Ling didn't hesitate and turned to leave the courtyard. At night, the city of Wei gathered in the guild hall. The guild hall in the city of Wei was like a hotel, but it was run by the government. Officials from all over would stay here, and rich businessmen also liked to come here. The scenery here was good, the feng shui was good, the pavilions were good, and the songs and dances were good. Master Pei Juezi stayed in the lake courtyard, but it wasn't the courtyard in the middle of a lake, but the courtyard of a girl in the middle of the lake. The beauty who couldn't stand the conquest had fallen into a deep sleep. Her bare shoulders outside the brocade quilt were silvered by the moonlight outside the window, smooth and flawless. Even in sleep, her slightly open mouth was still beautiful. Master Page Uezi rubbed the corner of her mouth with his finger. Thinking of the two red lips and the nimble tongue, he became restless again. But he felt sorry for the beauty who said she was tired. So he just hugged her under the quilt, thinking about where to go next. It wasn't his idea to go out for a walk, but he had to go. The people of the Qin family had to travel around the world to gain experience before becoming the national master, so that they could serve the emperor. But in fact, to serve the emperor, they didn't need to travel around the world. They just needed to travel around the world with beauties. Anyway, the emperor spent most of the year in the imperial harem. It was just to add to the fun. The city of Wei was a big city in the world, and deserved the praise of being a treasure. But the beauty was a little inferior. She didn't have the fair skin of the northern beauties, nor did she have the delicate cuteness of the southern beauties. But it was said that a fairy came to the city. It was said that she was a fairy from the cave, an immortal. Page Uezi would not be like those ignorant mortals who treated cultivators as incredible gods. He was not a cultivator, but he was, after all, from a rich and powerful family. Not only did he meet cultivators, he even conversed with them and befriended them. No matter how lofty a cultivator was, he still needed the support of mortals. The emperor was the son of heaven of the mortals. When the emperor was in trouble, the cultivators would always help him. He had seen cultivators from the various sects, and he had also seen cultivators from the Grotto Heaven once. However, he had never seen the female cultivator from the Grotto Heaven, who was said to be the head disciple of the sect leader. Even His Majesty had never seen him before. Was she really as beautiful as a fairy? But what did a fairy look like? Then no one had seen it before. Grandmaster Page Uezi was still very young, only 24 or 25 years old. Thus, once one's thoughts started to wander, it was really hard to stop. He was so engrossed in his thoughts that he didn't notice that the candle in the room had dimmed slightly. She didn't pay any attention to the soft plop sound. That was the sound of the guard falling to the ground. After a quarter of an hour, he suddenly heard a knock 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 sound. The sound interrupted his thoughts. Page Uezi frowned and turned around. He didn't know what would make the guard disturb him at this time. He lowered his voice. "What is it?" But no one answered him. The knock-knock sound continued. Page Uezi raised his voice. "I heard it. What is it?" Still no one paid attention to him. He got angry, lifted the blanket, and went to the bedside to find a robe. He decided that no matter what, he must first open the door and teach the person who knocked on the door a lesson. But the moment his fingers touched the soft and smooth apricot silk robe, his movements suddenly stopped. He was born in a rich and powerful family, was the only son, and was alone outside. He must have something to protect himself. For example, this ghost-repelling talisman that was hung on the door every night before he went to bed. It was said that it was written by a Taoist in the transcendent state of a sect. There was also the two monarchs' ghost-suppressing diagram that his grandfather, Grandmaster Dao Meizi, had left behind. Right now, the two monarchs' ghost-suppressing diagram was already burning. The dark green flame almost completely burned this painting that was priceless in the mortal world. The black Bai Yanjun on the painting had a twisted and strange expression as he jumped slowly in the flame. The ghost-repelling talisman. Above it was originally written on a gold plate with cinnabar. At this moment, the talisman written by the Taoist in the transcendent state was madly glowing red. Page Uezi's eyes instantly widened. He felt as if his head was hit by an unknown force. After 2 breaths, he started to pant madly. He grabbed the robe in his hands and quickly put it on. Then, he dragged his trembling legs and tried a few times to blow out the candles in the room. Once the room was dark, he could see the blood-red talisman more clearly and a huge figure outside the door. He stared at the figure for a while, sat on the ground, and chanted the scripture of tranquility a few times before he had the strength to stand up again. He felt for his pen on the table. The body of the pen was densely covered with complicated incantations. The tip of the pen even gave off a faint light in the night. This was both a pen and a talisman. In reality, there were more than a dozen of such pens in the treasure pouch on the other side of the room. But he really did not have the courage to walk through the dark room. He chanted the scripture a dozen more times, and the knock 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 sound did not stop. The huge figure outside the door patiently knocked on the door, and occasionally looked down, as if it was wondering why the person inside the room did not open the door. Every time it knocked, the red light of the talisman would tremble. It became dimmer and dimmer. Peijuezi gathered some courage, and was finally able to stand up again. He walked a step away from the door, and used the pen to poke the oil paper on the window frame. The quality of the oil paper in the Gathering Guild was very good. He did not break it with one poke. This almost used up all his courage. He was so panicked that he was about to cry. But he still gritted his teeth and poked again. It finally broke. But he used too much strength, and his hand trembled, so he made a long cut. Peijuezi hurriedly took 2 or 3 steps back, but he forced himself not to fall. He really was about to be scared to death. It was the first time he had seen such a situation. Even the dual monarch's suppressing ghost diagram that his grandfather had left behind, and the warding ghost talisman of the Daotong expert could not withstand the Yao power of the thing outside the door. He knew that he had no other way, but at the same time, he also knew that if he wanted to save his life tonight, he had to first see what exactly was outside the door. The black figure stopped. After a moment, it slowly lowered its head and moved closer to the hole. Peijuezi inhaled sharply and almost fainted, but he managed to hold on and see clearly. It was a large ghost with a face like the skin of an old melon. Its eyes were like copper bells, its bloody mouth wide, and its hands like eagle claws. It was staring at him through the crack. The large ghost saw him and cackled, its voice like a bell. "Why don't you open the door?" Peijuezi gritted his teeth and took a deep breath. Pushing down the memories in his mind, he said, "When a ghost king passes by, I should welcome him. But the room is simple and crude, and there are no 3 animals." Not waiting for him to finish, the large ghost became angry and used its claws to slap the door, saying, "Why don't you open the door? Why don't you open the door?" Chapter 71. She didn't know what method the big ghost used, but no one could hear its voice. It started to smash the door. The dual monarch ghost subduing diagram had already been burned, leaving only ashes on the ground. The red light on the ghost-repelling talisman was getting dimmer and dimmer, about to be extinguished. The doors and windows were banging, and even the girl in the lake, who was used to the noise of guests, had to wake up. She stretched with sleepy eyes, revealing a pair of beautiful breasts, and asked, "Qin Lang, why are you so noisy?" When Peijuezi saw her, he was stunned at first, and then his eyes lit up. Like an arrow, he dashed to the bed and picked up the girl in the middle of the lake without any explanation. The girl in the lake was startled to see this when she woke up. But at this moment, the big ghost didn't knock, and only looked through the crack with its bell-sized eyes. The girl in the lake didn't know what happened. Her eyes were still sleepy, and she didn't look carefully. She thought that Qin Lang had something to do, and the servant didn't know the rules and knocked on the door. Now that she was awake and her body was beautiful, she couldn't help but tease her. She had seen all kinds of guests, and even more that were out of line. These days, she knew that Qin Lang had a lively personality, and he loved her, so she wasn't angry. She forced herself to stay awake, stretched out her snow-white and slender arms, and hugged Qin Lang's neck. She leaned her head on his chest and said softly, "It's already so late. Qin Lang has a lot of tricks." Before she finished, Peijuezi had already carried her to the door. The girl in the lake blinked. "Qin Lang wants to," but her Qin Lang had already violently pulled her hand and passed it through the crack in the oil paper. "Please enjoy it, Ghost King, and spare my life." At this time, the girl in the lake saw the ghost outside the window. She saw the ghost open its bloody mouth and bite down on her hand. Qin Lang couldn't bear it and turned his head. The girl in the lake wanted to scream, but the pain she expected didn't come, and she only felt her hand go slightly numb. She lost her strength and consciousness. Peijuezi was also dumbfounded. This ghost didn't eat blood? It ate souls. He loosened his hand, and the girl's corpse fell to the ground. The big ghost ate the girl's soul, and it seemed to have become much stronger. It stared at Pei Juzi through the oiled paper. Open the door. Open the door. Every time he spoke, he would knock on the door. After 3 times, the ghost-repelling talisman on the door finally lost its light. The cinnabar that had been written into a talisman turned into powder and fell to the ground. The door was pushed open with a bang. The large ghost lowered its head and entered through the door. It grabbed Pei Juzi, who was terrified. The young painting master's body lit up one after another, but soon disappeared. The protective talisman that was placed on him to protect his life was easily crushed by the Ghost King. I am. He let out a final cry of despair before he stopped moving. After eating his soul, the big ghost sat on the ground and thought for a while. Then it closed the door and pulled Pei Juzi's body between its legs. Using her sharp fingernails, she carefully peeled off his clothes and underwear, revealing his torso. Then she leaned in closer and scratched the top of his head with the tip of her fingernail. Then he puffed up his cheeks and blew a gust of cold wind into the hole. What a sinister wind! Once it saw the flesh and blood under the skin, it instantly melted away. After 3 breaths like this, Pei Juzi's body had become a soft water bag. The large ghost picked up his legs and shook them. Smelly corpse fluid flowed out from the top of his head. When the skin was clean, the large ghost cut a hole in the back of the skin. First it reached in with a hand, then squeezed in with a head. Just like that, such a huge body was actually squeezed into the skin bag. This Pei Juzi stood on the ground for a while, straightened his nose and started to speak. At first the voice was extremely rough, but gradually became gentle. After saying a few words, the voice had become the original Pei Juzi's. He walked a few steps left and right before flipping onto the bed and wrapping himself in the blanket. Clearing his throat, he suddenly shouted, "Someone come! Someone come! Someone come!" This voice was extremely shrill and spread far into the night. At this time someone finally heard it. About 10 breaths later, the sound of chaotic footsteps and weapons clashing could be heard. A few guards held onto their hats as they charged in. Once they entered, they saw the female corpse on the ground and the smelly liquid. They didn't even have time to admire the beautiful female body before they stumbled from the stench and hurriedly covered their mouths and noses. Seeing the guards like this, Pei Juzi hurriedly covered his mouth and nose and scolded, "Trash! A monster killed someone in the night. A bunch of trash." With such a big matter happening, the guards couldn't care about the smell anymore. They hurriedly knelt on the ground and said in a sorrowful voice, "Young master, please investigate clearly. Just now, we were ambushed and only woke up when we heard you shout. It wasn't this subordinate." Pei Juzi slapped the blanket and waved his hand. "Get out! Get out! Carry her out! Don't speak of what happened tonight." The guards who wanted to escape punishment first paused when they heard this, and then hurriedly thanked him. They hurriedly carried the corpse of the girl in the middle of the lake out, and left a few people to use the remnants of their robes to wipe the floor. Of course, they didn't understand why their master let this matter go so easily. If they had to guess, they could say he was scared, or it wasn't too harsh to begin with. But in the end, it was the ulterior motive of the big shot. After such a busy night, the accompanying steward came to apologize and ask for the reason. However, the large ghost disguised as Pei Juzi only said that he didn't know anything, and went to negotiate with the guild hall on his own. The girl in the middle of the lake was not an ordinary prostitute, but her identity was not worth mentioning compared to the frightened master Pei Juzi. The guild was indeed sad for her, but they had to suppress it and promise to keep their mouths shut. At the guild, what ghost? It was just that he had gone overboard and someone had died. 3 or 4 girls died like this every year in the guild. When the sun was about to rise, this matter was finally over. The steward originally wanted to cancel the Baohua gathering at night, so that his master could have a good rest. But there was news yesterday afternoon that Ling Kongzi, the head disciple of the Langye cave, was also in the city of Wei, and wanted to attend the gathering. How could it be postponed? Even the emperor might not give face to such an immortal figure. When he asked his master, he found that his master was in a good mood. Usually, he liked women but did not like good food, so he ate very little for every meal. Madame had been worried about him since he was a child. But after the scare last night, his appetite was greatly increased. He tasted all the pastries he brought from Jinghua, and ordered a few more tables of dishes. After ordering, he only tasted a little of each dish, and waved his hand to dismiss the servants. After eating 100 dishes in a row, the quantity was also astonishing. The steward was happy to see this, so he gave the unused dishes to the servants, guards, and even the servants in the restaurant. But maybe because it hadn't rained for a long time, the vegetables and fruits were not growing well. When they ate the leftovers, they found it tasteless. It tasted like wax. Chapter 72. Just like that, the morning passed. At noon, the steward delivered the name list for the evening meeting, but he found that his master was only standing in the courtyard, looking towards the northwest. It was not appropriate to say that he was looking. His eyes were darting around. The old steward was so shocked that he stopped and felt a pain in his heart. It was as if he had been bewitched. But when he took a closer look, he saw that his master was fine. He was only rubbing his hands, as if he was afraid that his hands would wrinkle. He handed over the name list and asked, but he did not read it. He only glanced at it and said, "Good, good, very good. Go, go." This was not Grandmaster Pei Juezi's usual bearing as a prominent member of the capital. But the old steward thought that his master knew that Fairy Ling Kong was coming and lost his composure because he was too anxious. So he held the name list and slowly left. Only the Pei Juezi in human skin was left. He suddenly raised his head to look at a thin line of clouds in the sky and laughed strangely. At this time, Li Yunqin was changing into a Taoist robe. He did not like luxurious clothes, but he would not force himself to wear coarse clothes. The textile technology in this era was not very advanced. Even the cotton cloth that people bought from the shops was slightly coarse, not to mention coarse linen. But he was the Taoist apprentice of Hun Yuanzi, one of the 5 painters of artistic conception in the city of Wei, so he could not wear a brocade robe. Lao Dao wanted to broaden his horizons and see the world. Li Yunqin wanted to go for the fisherman fishing old man painting. For cultivators, reading pictures was a clean shortcut. As a transcendent painter, Li Yunqin was actually similar to those alchemists, a provider. But the problem was that he could not make something that could help him pass the delusion tribulation. He had not passed the tribulation himself. He had experienced many extreme emotions in his past life. But after thinking about it, it did not include this kind of experience, peace and tranquility, without any desires. As for these paintings, they were also divided into different levels. When an ordinary mortal learned how to paint, and created a painting, no matter how much emotion they put into it, it would still be an ordinary painting in the end, because he didn't cultivate spiritual energy. However, the painters obtained all kinds of superficial cultivation techniques, left behind in the world, and cultivated spiritual energy. Their paintings were no longer ordinary paintings. They could imbue their feelings into the painting with their spiritual energy. If a painter at the peak of the artistic conception realm happens to have a stroke of good fortune, giving birth to a strong feeling, and also happens to be at the peak of his spirit chi and spirit, then he can produce a famous painting scroll. That is, a famous painting scroll. A famous scroll was the highest achievement a painter at the pinnacle of conception, or even below, could achieve. Below the famous scrolls, there were also masterpieces, as well as those that couldn't even be considered masterpieces, and could only be sold for a few cents of silver to hang in the homes of ordinary people. If the painter broke through the concept and reached the emptiness realm, if a painter at the peak of the emptiness realm happened to be blessed with a strong sense of enlightenment, and if his spirit, energy, and spirit were all at their peak, then he would be able to create a precious painting scroll. Precious painting scroll. The fisherman fishing old man painting was a rare scroll. This was the highest achievement a painter in the mortal world could achieve. Most of the painters in the mortal world didn't know what happened 2,000 years ago. They didn't even know that the art saint existed. Therefore, even though they knew that there was such a thing as a treasure scroll in the world, they only thought, perhaps a powerful ancient being was blessed by the heavens and created a treasure scroll. But in reality, a painter at the peak of the transcendent realm could create a treasure scroll. In the past, the Taoist painting masters could create Lingtu after they broke through the transcendent realm and entered the true state. As for the spirit map, even for the ancient Taoist priests, this was already their limit. Lingtu were extremely rare in the world. Cultivators would occasionally mention their names, but there would be no more than 3 of them. Even the Taoist painting masters of the Grotto Heaven had to carefully store these things, let alone the mortals. Although they didn't know about Lingtu, almost all painters in the world knew about something even higher than Lingtu, the 8 treasures ancient scroll. What all the painters in the world knew was that a certain shockingly talented expert had created 8 works of art. Each of them far surpassed the treasured scroll, and could no longer be classified as a grade. Therefore, the 8 works were collectively known as the 8 treasures ancient scroll. As for the other cultivators who knew of the painting saint's existence, they knew that the octave treasures ancient scroll was created by the painting saint. However, no one knew if the 8 treasures ancient scroll had been lost, or had been taken away by the 2 saints. The only thing they knew was that the first scroll of the 8 treasures ancient scroll was called Misty Nun de Kai Di Mao. When Li Yunxin heard this name from her parents for the first time, she was dumbfounded. So he asked his parents to write the words down. It really was just a few words. He asked his parents what the name meant, and what the painting was about. But his parents said that they had never seen the 8 treasures ancient scroll, and couldn't understand the meaning of the art saint. But by then, Li Yunxin thought it was right that they couldn't understand it. As for the deeper meaning, he still had to think about it. Thus, the paintings created by the Taoist painting masters were divided into 8 treasures ancient scroll, spirit map, treasure scroll, rare scroll, famous scroll, and masterpiece. Apart from the 8 treasures ancient scroll, the remaining paintings were also divided into 5 grades, which corresponded to the 5 realms of cultivators: profound truth, emptiness. If a cultivator of the intent realm wanted to face the tribulation, they only needed to look for the masterpiece and carefully study it. However, if they didn't have enough understanding of the masterpiece, one painting wasn't enough. They had to find a few more and compare them to be able to understand it thoroughly. But first, paintings of the same type might not be found at the same time. Second, there were good and bad works mixed together. It was hard to say if the painter was biased or mixed with other emotions, which in turn affected the perceiver. Thus, when cultivators faced the tribulation, they mostly didn't use these kinds of things. These kinds of paintings were usually collected by wealthy merchants and high officials. Cultivators with low realms often used famous scrolls. Emptiness realm cultivators slowly considered the problem of facing the tribulation, so they collected these kinds of paintings. But the number of Taoist painting masters was already very small, so they didn't produce many. After facing the tribulation of 1,000 years, there were even fewer of them. Thus, only the disciples of the heavenly grottos had the fate to comprehend the high-quality and rare famous scrolls. As for the disciples of the sects, even the head disciple of the sect master, like Huai Nanzi, couldn't find a suitable famous scroll to face the tribulation of slaughter, so they could only walk the path of slaughter. When the cultivator's realm was higher, the number of tribulations they hadn't faced would decrease, and the remaining relationship tribulations would become stronger. Thus, many people felt that cultivators with low realms still looked like humans. But the higher the realm of the cultivator, the more they didn't look like humans. Since the tribulation became stronger, famous scrolls would probably have a limited effect. Then they would have to look for rare scrolls and treasure scrolls. And this was the reason why Li Yunxin had to go to the Baohua Association. Yin Pingji thought that he had played an overt trick on Li Yunxin and created a difficult problem. But he didn't know that he had given him a benefit. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.